Hi, I'm Andy Shalal. I'm the owner of Busboys and Poets. We are so happy to have Rock Newman and the Rock Newman Show join our tribe here. We are a tribe. This is a place where racial and cultural connections are consciously uplifted, a place where art, culture, and politics intentionally collide. This is a space to take a deliberate pause and feed your mind, body, and soul. We believe by creating such a space, we can actually change our community, change D.C., and change the world for the better. And now, the Rock Newman Show. Hi, I'm Andy Shalal.
Good morning, everyone. This is Rock Newman. Today is Saturday, August the 17th, 2013. We are bringing you our show today, broadcasting live from the Langston Hughes Room at Busboys and Poets, 14th and V Street, Northwest Washington, D.C. We have a very, very interesting show today, a real variety of a show that encapsulates much that's going on around the Washington, D.C. area with various personalities. In our first hour, we're going to be joined by Dr. Daryl P. Domning. He is professor of anatomy at Howard University College of Medicine, and Donald Morgan, University of Maryland student intern. They both have been working on a recent finding in Maryland, in Solomon's Island, Maryland, that discovered what is potentially a 15-million-year-old whale, the whale bones from a whale that perhaps dates as far back as not 150 years, not 1,500 years, not 15,000 years, but 15 million years. That's a very, very interesting discovery that people from all around the world are paying attention to. That's in the first hour. In the second hour, we're going to have Obi Egbuna. We're going to talk much about the legacy of Stokely Carmichael, also known as Kwame Ture. Kwame Ture was joined and assisted and collaborated for a very long time with Obi Egbuna Sr. and Jr. So they both had a real involvement in the life of Stokely Carmichael, better known, or I should say also known as Kwame Ture. And we're going to talk about Kwame Ture's drive, his vision as a Pan-Africanist and what all of that meant, the impact of Stokely Carmichael. And we also will talk about Obi Egbuna has written various plays. He's a writer for Zimbabwe newspaper. So we'll find all about what's going on with Mr. Egbuna. And then in the 11 o'clock hour, the matriarch of Ben's Chili Bowl, Virginia Ali, will come in. On this Thursday, this coming Thursday, August the 22nd, Ben's Chili Bowl will celebrate its 55th anniversary in business. And if any place represents the heartbeat of Washington, D.C., it is Ben's Chili Bowl. And the matriarch who's been there from the beginning and is there now, Virginia Ali, will be joining us. On this coming Thursday, as I said, they will be celebrating the 55th anniversary. There will be a press conference at Ben's Chili Bowl here on U Street in Washington, D.C. It will be hosted by Bill Cosby and many, many other politicians and dignitaries. So that will be Thursday morning at 9:55 because it's the 55th anniversary. It's not at 10 o'clock. It's at 9:55, and everything that day will be 5-5. She doesn't know it yet, but she will be receiving from each of Washington, D.C.'s professional teams, the Nationals, the Wizards, the Capitals, the D.C. United, every team, the team that has that R word, every team will be presenting her with a jersey that has Ali on the back and the number 55 commemorating her 55th anniversary. But without any further ado, let me go to our guest this morning. I want to say to Donald Morgan, University of Maryland, student intern, welcome to the Rock Newman Show.
Thank you for having me on, Rock.
Thank you for being here. And Dr. Daryl P. Domning, PhD, Professor of Anatomy, Howard University College of Medicine. Thank you very much. Welcome to the Rock Newman Show.
Thank you, Rock.
15 million year old whale bones, maybe. We'll get there in a second. Before we go there, I always like my audience to know a little bit about the people that I'm talking to, not just what you're doing now. So, Donald Morgan, tell me, you're a college student at the University of Maryland. What interest, well, first of all, no, let's go back. Where are you from?
I'm from St. Mary's County, Maryland.
Oh, so you grew up in Maryland?
Grew up and raised in Maryland, yes.
Uh-huh. Do you like crabs?
Of course.
You cannot be a true Marylander.
No, you can't.
And not like crabs. You might not be able to eat them because of some things that they'll do to you sometimes, but you gotta like crabs.
Of course.
What's your favorite crab place in the whole DMV?
Captain John's seafood restaurant.
In Pope's Creek?
Mm-hmm.
Captain John's. Why do I know where that place is? Probably every other restaurant you announce. I'll know where that is also. Okay, so you grew up in St. Mary's. Where'd you go to high school?
I went to Chaptacon High School.
Chaptacon High School. My high school, Gwen Park High School, used to beat Chaptacon all the time. I just want you to know that. When I was
still
playing.
Lose.
They still lose. And what interested you in this field of paleontology? Am I saying that correctly?
Yes, paleontology. Yes.
Paleontology.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It actually started when I was a little kid, and I got some toy dinosaurs. I was probably around like 5, and I just became obsessed with dinosaurs and everything to do with dinosaurs. And my dad used to work for a gravel company and used to bring home loads of gravel.
For a gravel company?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me the name of the gravel company.
Cheney
Gravel
Enterprise,
Company, well-known gravel company in this area. My dad my dad and all of my brothers used to work for Super Concrete.
Awesome.
Okay, so we've got some similarities there.
Yes, sir.
So you're interested, and you also are adorned. Now, is this part of that 15 million year old whale bone?
No, this is actually a cast replica of a Tyrannosaurus tooth that my sister
Say that again slowly for my audience.
Okay, this is a cast mold replica of a Tyrannosaurus Rex tooth. So what they do is they actually take the tooth, they encase it in a polymer, and they make a cast of it. So this is a replica of a T-Rex tooth.
So this dude is real interested. You're really interested in this subject, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
You must be excited about what's been going on in the last couple of months.
It's been amazing. I never dreamed of being able to do this this summer. This was awesome.
Okay, before we get to talking about it, Dr. Domning, first of all, you're from Howard University. HU in the house.
Oh, yes.
Yes, indeed. How are you?
Doing well.
Please tell us, again, as I was saying with Daryl, we, with Donald, we really like to do some biographical information. So if I can get a little history, I like my audience not to just know what my guests are doing now, but who they are. Mm-hmm. So where were you born and where did you grow up? Let's go all the way back.
I was born
not 15 million years,
no.
Let's go back a little bit.
Not quite that early. Yeah. I was born and raised in Biloxi, Mississippi, down on the Gulf Coast, and got interested in it very much the way Donald did, the dinosaur books and the toy dinosaurs and all that sort of thing.
So let me just ask you about that. So you grew up in Biloxi, Mississippi. Mm-hmm. Do you remember sort of the first thing that fascinated you about something in this paleontology field? And of course, at the time, you didn't know it was paleontology, but what first interested you in this subject?
Well, on the one hand, reading about it, and on the other hand, picking up bones, picking up dead animals. By the time I was in 4th grade, I was collecting carrion on the beach or wherever I could find roadkill or something, and skeletonizing dead animals and collecting bones and trying to figure out what they were and how they went together.
Now, were your parents, your guardians, were they supportive, or did they think you were kind of weird?
Well, yes and yes, I suppose. They were always supportive, tolerant, I guess would be a good word. My mother even put up with a dead rattlesnake in the freezer at one point.
Oh, my.
And yeah, they were always very supportive.
Okay, that's as a kid walking along the beach in the 4th grade. You go along, junior high school, get into high school. Did you have a significant influence, sort of outside of your parents, that you emulated, that you were a fan of, or anything like that? In the field, not so much?
Not really. I didn't know at that point much about the literature other than the popular books. I knew what paleontology was. I knew I wanted to be a paleontologist.
Now, when did you know you wanted to be a paleontologist?
Oh, in grade school at some point, probably 4th or 5th grade,
Really?
something like that.
Really?
Yeah.
So when you got into junior high school and they started like dissecting frogs and stuff like that, I mean, man, you were like real excited.
Yeah. I was putting skeletons together and that sort of thing, and even did a horse skeleton by the time I finished high school. And so
you did what kind of skeleton?
A horse.
So tell me what that means. Describe what you did.
A neighbor told me about, I was collecting horse bones, cow bones, any other kind of bones, but I was on the lookout for a relatively complete one, and a neighbor told me where there was a horse skeleton that he had seen out in the woods. It was reasonably complete, and I went out there and collected it, and sure enough, almost everything was there.
Just randomly, I mean, so you talked to a neighbor, and he says, oh man, I know where a horse skeleton is, or some bones are buried, or something like that.
Wasn't even buried, and sitting out on the ground, nice and clean by that point, and so I didn't even have to do much work.
So what happened? I mean, just a horse died, and
I don't know. I don't know whose horse it was. It was a little mare that wasn't all that old, so I don't know how it died. But,
and it was completely clean. I mean, the buzzards and whatever had come and picked its carcass.
Yep, and the bones were pretty much undamaged, and a few had been chewed on a little bit by some critter, but it was in very good shape. And so I took it home, cleaned it up, and
I was just going to ask you say cleaned it up. Yeah. Did it smell?
No, not really at that point. Really? This was a pretty easy cleanup job. So over the course of a summer, I figured out how to put it together and mount it, drilling holes, putting bolts in, metal armatures and things that I rigged up, and put it together.
Other kids in the neighborhood are like riding bikes, and they're doing, they got Etch-a-Sketch and erecto sets and that sort of thing.
Oh, yeah.
And you're erecting a horse.
Oh, yeah.
I would imagine some folks looked at you at the corner of their eyes sometimes. This cat's kind of weird.
I'm sure they did.
Wow. Donald, found any horse bones anywhere?
No horse bones, but I did kind of do the same thing with the deer skeleton that I found in the woods as a little kid.
A deer skeleton?
Yes.
As a little kid? Mm-hmm. How old?
4th grade.
Wow.
So I didn't
parallels
I didn't really go and put the bones through rods and articulate it back up, but I put the skeleton together on the ground and had it kind of mapped out like I was making my own little museum.
So in 4th grade, you're 10 years old.
Yeah.
So where did you find this deer?
We lived on a pretty rural property, so it was back in the woods. And I used to spend a lot of time in the woods looking for frogs, salamanders, snakes.
Now, frogs, you spend a lot of time in the woods looking for frogs, salamander, and snakes. Mm-hmm. For what? What were you going to do with them?
Just general interest. Just wanted to look at them and see how they lived.
Have you ever eaten snake?
No.
Have you ever eaten frog legs or anything like that?
Actually, no, I have not.
Okay. So you find this deer, and tell me the process from the time you found it until the time you got it like you wanted it. What did that take? Walk me through that process.
Okay, so the first thing I did was I came in and told my parents. I was ecstatic. I was like, I found bones out in the backyard. I found bones. So they made sure I put on, some latex gloves before I went out there at least. And I took a storage bucket and put the bones in, collected them, cleaned them off with a hose and a brush, and the same thing as Dr. Domning. They were pretty clean, so there wasn't too much cleanup to do, and put them in together like the way I wanted, and kind of set off like a little museum section. So these bones are kind of scattered. Yes.
And you take them and put them together and reconstruct the deer.
For the most part, yes.
Okay. And so what did you say? You said it had sectioned it off like a museum. Now, where did you house? Was this housed outside or in your
Yes,
bedroom?
my parents wouldn't let that in the house.
Right.
This was outside. I had a little clubhouse as a kid, and I made that into my museum.
Uh-huh.
So that's where it's at for
Let
a
me
long
ask you a
time.
question. When you went trick-or-treating, what was your trick-or-treat costume?
A Tyrannosaurus Rex. That was the easy one.
Say that again. What was your costume when you went trick-or-treating?
A Tyrannosaurus Rex.
A Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Yep.
Right, okay. Okay. Do you have a girlfriend?
Not at this point in time, no.
Okay.
Rock,
Doc, yes.
got to interject something. This is really getting uncanny. We get 2 more points here. I had a museum, too, with my bones. It was in a tree house that my father had built for me, and then later it moved to the attic of the house, but that's another thing.
Did you have any girlfriends?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
But the other thing is the first opportunity I had to collect any actual fossils, since there weren't any right there on the Gulf Coast,
Yeah.
on the beach or the barrier islands, were pieces of gravel in gravel quarries down there, not too far inland, or in some cases farther inland, with Paleozoic fossils in them.
With Paleozoic fossils?
Yeah, these are like 200, 300 million year old fossils, but washed down from the Appalachians and deposited in the southeast in various places, gravel deposits. But my family didn't own the gravel company, but I went out and collected in gravel pits, and that was my first experience of actual collecting fossils.
Wow. So much more I want to talk to you two about when we come back. Hey, girlfriend, come on over to my house. I want you to see this horse I just constructed. We'll be back in just a moment on The Rock Newman Show.
This is Leprechaun Tim Pohanka from Pohanka Nissan and Pohanka Hyundai. It's hard to be down on your luck when you're Virginia's first choice for new Nissan and Hyundais, but I need to sell 60 cars this week. Right now, I'll pay you big bucks for your good luck. Bring down any good luck charm you've got, and based on the sale price of the car you choose, I'll give you up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car this week. Today, your lucky penny is worth plenty, up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car you want. Stop moping and hoping you'll get approved. With my For the People credit approval process, the banks are looking to get lucky and lend to you, even if you've been turned down before. Bring me any good luck charm and I'll give you up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car today. Hurry, once I get rid of 60 cars, the luck runs out. All offers require bank approval, so call us at 1-800-POHANKA, visit Pohanka Nissan and Pohanka Hyundai on Route 1 in Fredericksburg, or better yet, log on to TimPohankaForThePeople.com. And when we make a deal, I promise it'll be your lucky day. I'm Tim Pohanka, and I'm a leprechaun for the people.
And now, the Rock Newman Show.
Welcome back to the Rock Newman Show. I am Rock Newman. We're broadcasting live. I love to say this from the stage at the Langston Hughes Room at Busboys and Poets, restaurant, bookstore, place for folks to come and have a great time and help change the world one conversation and one meal at a time. My guest in this hour is Donald Morgan, the University of Maryland student intern, and Dr. Daryl P. Domning, professor of anatomy, Howard University College of Medicine. In our first segment, we kind of find out how these guys got interested in paleontology. And we left off with Dr. Downing explaining to us the similarities between he and the student here, between the teacher and the student. So if we can go now to what became news recently. Saw this, really interesting, fascinating article in the Washington Post. And it talked about a place where Robert E. Lee grew up, a place where Robert E. Lee's homestead, Solomon's Island, Maryland, the Calvert Marine Museum, under the auspices of the Calvert Marine Museum. There was this dig being done, or this excavation. And during the excavation, we came upon whale bones. Now, Dr. Downing, if you could share with us, sort of take us, what was the project, did it set out looking for these bones, or was it because it thought for some reason from past times? How did it come about getting these whale bones?
No, somebody found the whale first, and that was the instigation for the excavation.
So when you say somebody, you mean somebody just walking along?
A staff member at Stratford Hall. That's actually in Virginia, across the Potomac.
Yes.
And it was a staff member there who, I believe, originally reported it, but I think Donald should be the one to explain, because he knows more about, he's been more involved in the project than I have been.
Okay, Donald, tell us, kind of walk us through what happened. And I know this just had to have you sweating all over the place, man.
All right, so what happened was a staff member at Stratford Hall, his name's John Bachman, was walking the beaches, and he was looking at the
again,
cliffs.
Stratford Hall is on the Virginia side of the Potomac.
Yes, that's on the Virginia side of the Potomac.
Right, Potomac River. Right.
Yes, sir. And he was looking at the beach, and on the cliffs he saw some of the occipital condyles, which are the back of the skull that articulates with the vertebra, sticking out of the cliff. And
So wait a minute, what's that thing again? What's the name of it?
occipital condyles.
Occipital condyles.
Yes.
Okay, y'all know what that is. Right,
But they were sticking out of the cliff, so he first called, a couple of other museums, and then he called our museum. And
So he's walking down on the beach. He kind of looks up and sees.
Once you've been fossil hunting for a while, you start to pick up on certain details and differences, especially in the cliffs of like the Calvert Formation, which is still there in Virginia.
Right.
And you can start to see things that the general eye would not be able to pick up on.
So he sees something jutting out of the cliff. He's walking on the beach. Okay.
So we get the phone call to come out here, and we're thinking that it's probably going to be like a 3-foot whale skull, and hopefully we have a little bit more than just the back of the skull.
Okay, stop for a moment. So you think you get a call, and just sort of automatically, for some reason, you think it's you and your people, John Nance.
And Dr. Stephen Godfrey.
Yes. They think that it's going to be a 3-foot whale.
Yes.
Why do you even think that from what he told you was a 3-foot whale? What made you think that? Why did you have that assumption?
We try not to get our hopes too high when we go into a situation, because fossilization of any material is pretty rare. And it's more often than not that you're going to get a partial piece of a skull or a bone that fossilizes rather than a majority of the bones.
Right.
So we try not to come up with too high of hopes in the beginning.
So you're walking down there thinking, oh, okay, we're probably going to get a skull here.
Yeah,
Or maybe a 3-foot whale, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Okay. All right, now, walk me on through.
So we start digging in the cliff, and what turns out to just be a skull at first.
Now, when you say start digging in the cliff, how high is it from the floor?
It's only about 2 feet. So
okay.
It's reasonable height, and it was pretty easy for us to dig in it. So it wasn't like a situation where we had to stand on ladders or anything like that to dig. So it was pretty safe. And we start digging through the cliff. And it's basically a clay layer that we're digging through. And we start finding other pieces of bone. We found the mandibles.
You're digging through. What are you using to dig through?
The most iconic tool, I guess, would be the pickaxe that we use to get off the major layers. And then for around bones, we use putty knives and flat-headed screwdrivers. So
and how deep, how far do you have to go into?
We ended up digging about like a 6.5-foot trench. So it was pretty deep. It took a long time.
As in how
long? We just finished this week, and we started at the beginning of June.
So you have to be extraordinarily careful.
Yes, it's very tedious work. Very tedious working in the cliffs.
Now, who is it that is in charge of that is instructing you how to go in there and to get whatever it is you're trying to get?
John Nance and Dr. Stephen Godfrey were the two that were in charge of the dig in general. And Dr. Domning also assisted.
Are they doing a lot of the digging, or are they just telling you how to dig?
Oh, no, they're very good about that. They
so
actually
they roll
get
up their
in there
sleeves
and roll up their
sleeves. They're just not academicians sitting back.
No.
Okay.
They're very hardworking. Yeah, everybody worked that was on the dig.
Okay, so you dig. Okay, keep going.
So we start digging and digging, and then we find the bottom jaws of the whale, and this was the indication that it was a lot larger than what we first expected.
Right.
Because the bottom jaws were over 6 feet. And
the jaw itself is 6 foot, over 6 feet?
The bottom jaws itself are about 6 feet.
Okay.
So
as, paleontology enthusiasts, you all are now finding a 6-foot jaw. Are you starting to feel like you done hit the lottery here?
Yes, exactly. That was pretty much what happened. We were so excited to start digging more and more and more of the whale out. And it just seemed like after we started digging, we kept on finding more bones. We have jackets of ribs and vertebra, part of a scapula, parts of a flipper. So there was a lot of the whale there. We got very lucky. It's very rare to find something like that.
Doc, how is it, whether it's 1,000 years or 1,000,000 years or 10 million years, how in the world is it that this structure remains intact that period of time?
Well, once something like that falls to the bottom of the ocean in a shallow sea, which this was in the Chesapeake area at that length of time ago, what are they saying the likely depth was there? 50 feet to 100 feet, something like that?
I think they're estimating probably close to 150.
150, okay. So, but still shallow seas. The whale dies, the carcass sinks to the floor, the skeleton is, in this case, messed around with a bit by currents and scavengers, sharks and things, so the bones are not perfectly articulated, but so the skeleton is largely there and associated, and gradually is covered by silt washing in from erosion on the land.
Okay, so let me stop here. So there's clearly the knowledge that this was 150 foot deep water, which water is no longer there.
Right.
That water is no longer there.
Right.
Exactly.
What happened to that water?
Well, the sea level changes itself depending on, for example, how much ice there is piled up on land. So during ice ages, and we are still, broadly speaking, in an ice age compared to 15 million years ago, so that there weren't the big ice caps on Greenland and Antarctica then that there are now. So that brings the sea level down. And then there are also changes in the elevation of the land itself. And so in more recent times, there's been a bit of uplift of the land there as well. So what a point that was 150 feet closer to the Earth's surface, to the Earth's center then, well, not that amount closer to the center, but has uplifted a little bit relative to other parts of the Earth's crust, and the sea level has gone down, so that now that level where that skeleton was deposited is, a couple of feet above mean high tide, or mean sea level.
Right.
So it gets covered by silt, by clay, which gets compressed as more and more is piled on top of it, and you've got maybe a couple of 100 feet more sediment originally piled on top of it, some of which is eroded away now.
Right.
And then the whole package gets uplifted, and then the waves start eroding the cliffs until the bones are exposed. That's basically the pattern.
Okay. How in the world is there a measurement that measures and ages something a million years, let alone 15 million years? I mean, that's just, when I read it, it was like I was reading, fiction. It's like, how could this be? Really, I'm really unfamiliar with this stuff, but I was really, really fascinated by it. So how in the world is that measured that gives something with some authenticity and integrity?
Right.
How do you get that age?
Indirectly, basically, and we have to back up a couple of 100 years to figure out how it was figured out. When the first attempts were made to figure out the time scale of geologic events on the Earth, it was pointed out that stuff on the bottom has to be older than stuff on the top as a general rule. We stack things up. And then fossils became used to correlate a stack of rock layers in one place with those in another. If you find similar fossils in two different places, that's a hint that they are the same age. And that was noticed before people figured out the reason for that. And the reason, of course, is evolution, because with time being irreversible, directional, life changes, and so the fossils that existed at one time are different from those at another time because evolution has taken place. Okay, so evolution gives us the basic structure of a history of life, and therefore a history of the rocks that preserve the fossils of the living things. Now, the latest thing was being able to put numbers on the ages of those rock layers. It was understood, a couple of 100 years ago even, that there were not just thousands or tens of thousands, but probably millions of years of history recorded in rocks on the Earth. But nobody knew exactly how many. There were guesses, educated guesses, some of which were not too bad. But it wasn't until the 1950s or so that people started using radiometric dating. People are familiar with carbon dating, but that only works back about 50,000 years or so. There are other radioactive isotopes that nuclear physicists have worked out the half-lives of, and some of them have very long half-lives.
What does that mean, half-life?
The time it takes for a radioactive atom to decay spontaneously into some other kind of atom by throwing off particles. And So the half-life is the period during which half of the atoms of that substance would decay into something else. And then in another half-life, half of what was left would decay. So there's a geometric
Excuse me just one
progression.
moment. Let me make an announcement to my production staff here.
Sure.
This is so fascinating and so interesting. We're going to go right to 56. We're going to skip this upcoming break here and continue with this.
Okay.
You mentioned the E word,
Yes.
evolution,
Yep.
which is a four-letter word.
To some people.
To some people.
unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's
Okay.
taken out of context.
I want to get into that. I want to talk about that.
Good.
You know, a lot of folks think recorded time starts, 2,000 years ago,
Or 6,000.
or some think 6,000. So, what do you say?
I'm sorry that people are hung up on that, because speaking as a believer myself, as a Christian myself, I find that evolution makes Christianity, for example, more comprehensible, makes it more sense, makes more sense of it than trying to understand it in the absence of evolution. I've written quite a bit on this and spoken about it. To me, a universe that evolves and a biosphere that evolves says something a lot more impressive about the creator than imagining a much smaller creator who has created a much smaller world in time and space and everything else. I mean, if you're going to talk about God being infinite, then it's a little hard to square that with a six-day creation 6,000 years ago on this one little tiny planet. I mean, this is a
Now,
very
when you say
big
that,
universe.
Doc, when you say that, what do fundamental Christians say to you? Do they
They
boo you?
They say that basically you have to take what is written in the book of Genesis as the literal truth, and if you accept that premise, then you are restricted to a short time span, a small universe, and to me, a small concept of God.
Of God, right.
Whereas if you understand better the way in which the Bible came about, the way it was written, what it consists of, the kind of documents it is, because it's not a single book, the Bible is a library of books.
Sure.
If you understand the types of literature that are there, what people were trying to get across when they wrote down what they wrote under the inspiration of God, we believe, you are not constrained to that literalist interpretation of the words that are there.
So in other words, can I encapsulate that to say that, if I'm hearing you correctly, that the Bible is not something that, from your vantage point, is not something that you can take literally?
Not in all cases. It's a complicated
Or
document.
it being the inerrant word of God because it was written by man.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So how is it the inerrant word of God?
Because it is, we believe it is inerrant in what it is trying to tell us, and it is not intended to be a science book. It is not intended to be a geology textbook or a history of the earth. It's the history of God's actions with a group of people. Mm-hmm. God's relationship.
How those people interpret.
How those people interpreted their experiences as being part of their relationship with God, and what conclusions that leads to about how people are supposed to behave to be in correct relationship with God.
Well, let me stop you there for a second.
Yeah.
There's probably somewhere about a 50-year gap between you all's ages.
Oh, come on.
I'm assuming, 40. Let's call it 40. Let's call it whatever. Somewhere. So, how do you respond to that?
I personally do believe in the theory of evolution. It's quite obvious to me, at least. Let's say you take a flipper of a whale, a human hand, and say like a bat wing, okay? You have all the same bones.
Why
the
you
same
gotta add
amount.
that into it?
Just something that does not
You
look
really are into this stuff.
that does not look human.
Yeah, gotcha.
And you take all the digits out. You have the same ones in the whale, you have the same ones in the human, and you have the same ones in the bat.
Right.
They're just elongated in different
Supporting
proportions.
the wing.
Exactly.
Okay.
So everything is there for the plan work. And if you trace it back, even if you go to different species, you look at the way that our bodies are put together. Say like humans have a 4-chambered heart, so do all other mammals. So does a crocodile. You know, there's certain homologies that are throughout the whole animal kingdom, not just animals, but living things in general,
Right.
that point to the fact that there is something like evolution. Another point that I like to think about is, say you have a bacterial infection.
Yes.
And you go to the doctor.
Right.
You get an antibiotic, and they tell you to take it for 10 days.
Mm-hmm.
You take it for 6 days, and then you stop. A couple of days later, you start getting sick again. You take that same antibiotic, but it doesn't work. It's because you've eliminated all the bacteria that were susceptible to that antibiotic, and now all that's left, and that continue to replicate and infect you again, was bacteria that is not affected by the antibiotic. And that to me is like a clear picture of really how evolution works.
Folks, my name is Rock Newman. We're broadcasting from Busboys Reports at 14th and D Street, Northwest Washington, D.C. We're in the Langston Hughes room, and my guests are University of Maryland student intern Donald Morgan and professor at Howard University College of Medicine, professor of autonomy, Dr. Daryl P. Domning. Let me ask you, Donald, you are a student. You're obviously very knowledgeable about this, and Professor, I would suspect that you're impressed with this student here.
Oh, yeah.
What's your dream? What do you want to do when you grow up?
I want to be a vertebrate paleontologist, and I want to work with early reptile evolution.
Why?
That's fascinated me, and for reasons that I really want to figure out. Okay, so reptiles and mammals share this similarity that we are both amniots. We have an amniotic egg.
What does that mean, amniots?
What it means is that we have a layer called an amnion to our eggs. If you look at, like, say,
you said to our eggs?
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Because we have amniotic fluid
Right.
when we have babies. Reptiles in their eggs, they have certain layers like the amnion, the chorion, which is all present in mammals. Mm-hmm. But if you look at other tetrapods, say like frogs, mm-hmm. they have a very simple egg. I really want to work in that field to figure out when that change occurred from the simple frog egg to the very complicated amniotic egg that is present in reptiles and mammals and birds.
Okay. Good luck, and I'm sure you're going to be. We're going to read
it's
about
a highly
you.
debated topic.
We're going to read something great about you one day. I have no doubt about that, Don. Let's go back to the dig, conducted by the Calvert Marine Museum on the lands where Robert Lee once roamed and owned. So you got this well. You go into the side of the cliff, and you see this, what's it called again?
Occipital condyle.
Yeah, that's what it is. And that's sticking out, and you think you got a 3-foot whale. But you go out there and you find a 6-foot jaw. How big is the whale?
We're estimating that the whale in life would be about 25 feet in length, which compared to modern day whales probably doesn't sound like that large, but in the Miocene during this time period, that was a pretty sizable whale.
25 feet.
Yes, sir.
What would something like that have weighed? Have you?
Many tons. We really don't have an estimate on the mass of the animal, but I would assume it would be many tons.
Wow. Now, it's much smaller than the modern day whale, because the modern day whale, they get up to what?
A different species, yeah, like the blue whale could probably get up to around 100 feet.
That's what I'm saying, about 100 feet and truly many tons.
Yes.
Now, why? I mean, do you feel as if there were any 100-foot whales back then, or no?
I'm not really sure.
I don't think any nearly that large are known from the Middle Miocene, which is what we're talking about.
You said the Middle Maya?
Middle Miocene.
Middle Miocene.
That's the epoch of geologic time that this whale is from. The ones the size of a modern blue whale are relatively recent in their evolution. At that time, I don't think there are any whales that large known anywhere in the world. And they may turn up. We may just have not found them yet, but I suspect not. I suspect they came along a few million years later. So this one would have been about the size of a modern minke whale, as it's called. It's a smaller baleen or whalebone whale.
So, Doc, this discovery made news. Why is it important?
Well, we don't know yet how important it's going to be, really, until we get until the folks at the Calvert Museum get the specimen prepared and identify it. Maybe it's a relatively common species from that epoch, or maybe it'll be something rare or something entirely new. So it'll maybe be a couple of years before we really know how significant it is from a scientific viewpoint.
So physically now, has it all been extracted from the cliff and brought into a particular area in the museum, or what's the status?
It's for the most part, all the jackets now are in the museum, and we wrap the bones in a field jacket along with some of the matrix or soil that's with it. We're working on the skull right now. If you go down to the Calvert Marine Museum in the Paleontology Hall, you could have a chance to see us out there actually working on it. We're working on it in front of the public just to give them an idea of what we're doing and how it really works. And you can watch us. It's not really that interesting to watch for too long, but we're out there with dental tools and brushes gently scraping away all the dirt.
Mm-hmm. Doc, tell us, you've been in this field, you've been interested in it since a child, you came through, where did you go, where did you do your undergrad work?
Tulane University in New Orleans.
Okay.
I was a geology major, biology minor, and then made it a double major, and then went to University of California at Berkeley for my graduate work in paleontology.
Okay, so you did that. So you've been in this for quite some time, longer than he's been born.
Yes.
Let's at least put it that way. What has been the most fascinating aspect of what you do?
Finding new animals, new kinds of critters that nobody knew existed before, and describing them, naming them, fitting them into the evolutionary tree, see what they're related to, and figuring out the changes that a particular group of animal underwent during millions of years of its evolution, and figuring out how they lived, what their paleoecology was. You know, what did they eat? How did they go about eating it? What kinds of environments did they live in? What was their life like?
Does the student and the teacher agree on where we came from? On where we, man, came from?
Oh, I'm sure we do. I mean, there's a pretty good consensus about that now in science. There's not very much disagreement except in very small details.
Okay, so would you come walk me back through our evolution?
Well, starting how far back?
Well,
we could go back to the reptiles, to
Yes.
the mammal-like reptiles, and I'll let him talk about that. But then the first true mammals actually got their start at the same time as the first dinosaurs, which is in the late Triassic period.
how many years ago?
What's that? 200 something.
235.
235. Okay, I don't work in that part of the geologic column, so I don't have those numbers.
235 AD?
Off the no BC.
BC, okay.
235 million.
Yeah.
BC. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So, first mammals,
Yes.
235 million years ago.
Yes.
You probably are really upsetting some fundamental Christians right now. How could it have existed?
They've heard about it. I'm sure
Yes.
they've been upset by a long
Okay,
time.
so I'll tell you what. Walk us backwards. Now we're these pretty men and women. What was the one before what we know now?
Well, you've got Homo erectus going back. Well,
That really sounded like that could belong to a porno film, Homo erectus. But I'm gonna not. Not going to
It was
say
found
that.
a little while ago, back in the early 1900s. So it's before that kind of era.
It refers to walking erect,
Yeah,
walking
yeah.
upright, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Let's not go that up.
Okay.
So there's a whole bunch of different species of fossil humans and human-like groups. The Neanderthals were sort of a parallel sister group, cousins of ours that died out in Europe. So before them, you had Homo erectus, and
Then Australopithecus,
Africanus, and a variety.
You know
of
what
other
I'd like to
things.
do? Okay, now no joking aside this time. Homo erectus. What does that mean? Tell us what that is.
That was a hominid that a member of the human family that probably got its start in Africa, but spread out. It was important because it was very widespread and very long surviving in time.
What part of Africa? Let's stop for a minute.
Yeah.
What part of Africa?
East Africa is the area that has produced most of the human-related fossils. Also South Africa. North Africa, has, to a lesser extent, the record isn't as good there. So mostly it's East and South Africa.
So general wisdom, original man, emanated from Africa.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's a pretty good consensus about that, both on the fossil record and on genetics.
So if
DNA.
one says today, for example, that if you really just sort of go back and the original man and woman was from Africa and the bloodline started there to
Yes.
some extent.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Today as we sit here, no matter what color we are, what hue our skin might be to some
Exactly.
extent, there is the bloodline of Africa that is amongst us.
Go far enough back.
What's up, my African brother?
Yeah, we're all Africans. We're all Africans to begin with.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
We've got about 2.5 minutes. What's the future? What's exciting for the future? What's paleontology? Not something I've ever talked much about in my life. I mean, what's on the horizon? What's brewing? What's brimming? What do folks have to be excited about looking towards?
Well, there's always the advance in technology and the more accuracy that we can apply to fossil material as far as dating or making phylogenetic trees of relationships between animals is always exciting because you can really start to put together the picture of how our planet evolved to what it is today. I would love to work on phylogenetics, which is the making of trees, of how we first started and branched off and diversified as far as vertebrates go. That's
Do you guys think there's human form on other planets?
Oh, sure. Well, they may not look much like humans. I think if we ever meet them, we'll be surprised by two things: how different they are from us and how similar they are to us. Mm-hmm. But sure, there's intelligent life all over the universe.
And if it's intelligent life, I've always submitted that those of us here from Maryland who love crabs, if you ever come to see a crab feast and you see all this crap, all this gook that's on the table, I've always said, if intelligent life came from another place and saw us eating this crap, they'd get the hell out of here so fast they wouldn't know what to do. Man, this has been a very quick but informative hour. I really am going to keep up with you guys. I want to really keep up with this project. I'm going to drive down. I'm going to maybe drive down. We'll bring some of our cameras down, because this is such
keep in touch with him.
Fascinating story. Good luck to you. I know you're going to be
appreciate
great
being on here.
Dr. Downing from Howard University, always a pleasure to have the bison in the house. Thank you so much. Folks, we'll be right back after these messages with Obi Egbuna. An exciting hour on the Rock Newman Show in the Langston Hughes room at Busboys and Poets. See you in a moment.
My baby drives a handcuff.
The weekend is here, and no matter what the weather's like outside, you'll find the deals inside here in the beautiful showroom of the all-new Pohanka Hyundai in Capitol Heights during their giant Markdown Madness sale.
Smart shoppers know that every new Hyundai in Pohanka comes with Hyundai Assurance and America's best 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. But why don't you tell them about the Markdown sale, Joe?
I'll be happy to, Kim. Folks, shop around on the web, and you'll see lease payments on a new 2013 Elantra GLS at $179 a month. Today at Pohanka Hyundai, $99 a month. That's right, a $99 payment on a brand new Elantra.
And $89 a month on a new 2013 Accent GLS Automatic. How do they do it, Joe?
It must be the volume, Kim. A brand new building, hundreds of new Hyundais, and Pohanka's low payment and easy credit programs are designed to get everybody driving. But you have to get here today. Rush to the giant Markdown Madness sale at exit 13 off the Capitol Beltway.
Pohanka Hyundai, king of the Beltway. All financing for a limited term on approved HMF credit.
My baby drives a handcuff.
Hello to all my friends in the DMV. I am Rock Newman from the Rock Newman Show. I want to tell you about the MGM Grand National Harbor, the most exciting project to come to the District, Maryland, or Virginia in quite some time. You're going to have great fun. Come on down, support this project with all you have. It is going to be wonderful for the area. We're going to increase our tax base. We're going to get funding for the police department, for ambulance, for fire, for education. It is really a project that is going to benefit our area. Folks, we want to support in a very strong DMV kind of way this great project from the MGM Grand National Harbor.
And now, the Rock Newman Show.
Welcome back, folks. I am Rock Newman, and in this hour, we have Obi Egbuna, and in the next hour, we're going to be celebrating 55 years of Love and Half Smokes, the story of Ben's Chili Bowl. The matriarch of that incredible Washington, D.C. family, Virginia Ali, will be joining us. And we're excited about that, and I'm also excited right now to introduce you to my next guest. Obi Egbuna is a teacher, a journalist, and a children's playwright. He writes for the Zimbabwe, the main Zimbabwe newspaper. His father is by the same name, Obi Egbuna, who was a Pan-Africanist spanning many years ago. They both spent a very long time with someone that I have such admiration for, respect. I talked about it publicly via Facebook a week or so ago, and I talked about my incredible admiration for Stokely Carmichael, also known as Kwame Ture. And one of the responses that I got said, well, man, you ought to have Obi Egbuna on your show. He can talk about his time with Stokely. He can talk about his father's time. I talked about having such incredible admiration for the ideology and the goal of Stokely Carmichael, which was, if I understand it correctly, he is a Pan-Africanist to the core of his being.
Yes.
Obi Egbuna, welcome to the Rock Newman Show.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
If we can start here.
Sure.
Can you give what you think is the most appropriate definition of Pan-Africanism?
Most definitely. Pan-Africanism is the total liberation and unification of the African continent under scientific socialism. Hoping that Africans all over the world embrace that goal, not only on the continent of Africa, but in the diaspora, which would mean that the Africans in Australia who've been there 80,000 years embrace that goal. Africans in the UK embrace that goal. Africans in India, where there are 160 million of us, embrace that goal. And Africans in every corner of the continent, the southern region of Africa, the eastern region of Africa, the northern region of Africa, and the western region of Africa embrace that goal, regardless of our religious and spiritual makeup, regardless of our economic makeup. We all make a genuine commitment to that goal and strive towards that goal, even if we are not privileged to witness it take fruition.
To the goal of?
One unified, liberated African continent moving in a socialist direction, just like those who came before us wanted it to ultimately be. And ironically, the first time the term is used is out of Trinidad by Henry Sylvester Williams, the same place that Brother Kwame was born, June 29, 1941.
Yes. And when did he coin the phrase?
He coined the phrase that right before the 20th century. Mm-hmm. Right before the 20th century. And so many others used the phrase and helped develop the phrase and gave some clarity to the objective itself.
How do those in the struggle equate your desire to what has happened with the state of Israel?
Whoa. Well, of course, and it's funny that you bring that up, because one of the main areas that I work with Brother Kwame Ture around was establishing something called the WWAAZF, the Worldwide African Anti-Zionist Front, which was created in Tripoli, Libya in 1990. And one of the things that he told me, he said that his generation had pushed aggressively to assure that we and the Palestinian people maintained an unbreakable bond. He talked to Ethel Minor, who worked with Malcolm X and the Organization of Afro-American Unity, ended up, and then the Nation of Islam before that, ended up working very closely with SNCC. She developed a paper called The Palestinian Problem, and that was the reason that the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee came out against the Six-Day War, which many people felt led to the demise of that organization. And when he gave me that history, he also talked about the fact that if you go back and take a look at Malcolm's history, Malcolm X is the first person to develop a relationship with a gentleman named Ahmed Shukari. For those who don't know who Ahmed Shukari is that are listening in, he's the founder of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. And when Muhammad Speaks started, when Malcolm was the national spokesman of the Nation of Islam, what you see today in the final call, the Middle East Report, controlled by Mr. Ali Baghdadi, that stems from a segment dealing with the Palestinian question that Malcolm arranged for the paper to consistently cover. So what Kwame was telling us is our generation would have to show that Zionism is a direct enemy of African people. And of course we know that Israel tried to bomb Egypt off the face of the map during that Six-Day War. We know that when Algeria got its independence, it was Israel who stood up in the United Nations and failed to recognize their sovereignty. They did the same thing to Tunisia. Israel openly supported apartheid, and not only what we commonly refer to as South Africa, they helped the Rhodesians try to maintain control over what we call today Zimbabwe, over what we call today Zambia. They aided the Germans in trying to maintain a colony of Namibia, and they did the same thing in Mozambique and Angola. Many people feel that off the continent of Africa, one of the safe havens for us based on dealing with true human rights in its purest form, free education, free health care, is none other than Cuba. And Israel is one of the only countries in the world that maintains the position that the blockade against Cuba, that over 180 countries vote unequivocally against at the United Nations every year, it is Israel that stands firm with the United States on that particular question. So we would have to say without apology, without hesitation, and we have the facts to prove it, that everywhere Africans make progress, it is Israel that always stands up and tries to undermine and sabotage our genuine efforts to have self-determination in our lifetime, and eventually for future generations to have it as well, if we have the ability to maintain it, that is.
Yeah, well, I would say that certainly, if anyone here of the Jewish persuasion were listening to you,
yes,
maybe not everybody,
okay,
but certainly many would hear the comment that you just made,
yes,
and said, wow, that's a rabid anti-Semite, and you would say?
I would say that I would say I'm the one insulted, because I condemn Zionism, an atheist political philosophy that does not deal with God at all. I did not say a thing about Judaism. As a matter of fact, true Jews would appreciate it, because Jews understand that Zionism has stained their religion. How can an atheist political philosophy, denying the existence of God, claim to be in pursuit of land that God chose for their people? It was the Balfour Declaration in 1914 that Lord Arthur Balfour was British. Theodore Herzl, the creator of the Zionist movement in 1897, like we said, he's an atheist. They were the only grouping of people that had and remember, the Zionist movement is created 12 years after the Berlin Conference, where Africa was sliced up like a Papa John's or Pizza Hut pizza for the taking of our former colonial slave masters. Them being left out of the equation, they wanted some land of their own to colonize. They originally looked at Kenya, they originally looked at Uganda, they originally looked at a place in Switzerland. Then to support the mythology of that's at the root and foundation of the Jewish religion, which, by the way, Africans gave to the world. So, and because of our history, knowing that one of the most atrocious crimes committed by our former colonial and slave masters was not just the land they raped, not just the land they plundered, not just the human resources they exploited with no pity and no mercy, but the fact that they did it in the name of God. The Arab slave trade was done in the name of Islam. So one of the things, us being arguably the most spiritually diverse people on earth, we feel there are two things that human beings do not have the luxury of ever doing: conquering a people in the name of God and using God as an excuse not to fight against being conquered. I personally believe the latter is worse.
So as a philosophy,
Yes.
As a philosophy doctrine, it is not about being anti-Jewish.
Not at all.
It's
A religion
Zionism.
that we gave to the world? Of course not.
Okay.
It is in the name of Judaism that we fight against Zionism.
Say that again?
It is in the name of Judaism and any other authentic form of spirituality or religion, if you will, that we fight against a ruthless group of colonialists and imperialists who commit their atrocities in the name of a religion.
Okay. Let's go, let's talk about your dad.
Sure.
Your dad was a powerhouse. He was an organizer. He was an early proponent of Pan-Africanism. And, you know, on its face, you know, what I call the lofty but beautiful goal of Pan-Africanism is something that I would just think that people of good conscience could embrace around the world. And people of good conscience don't just come in one color, of course.
Not at all, no.
So, your father was very rooted in that philosophy.
Still is.
Tell us where he got it from, and
oh, wow.
and folks who might not know, might not ever heard that funny sounding name, Obi Egbuna. Tell us a little bit about your dad, where he got his political activist energy.
Okay.
Talk to us about your dad.
Well, I mean, this is the thing about that. Of course, I mean, he's a novelist, a playwright, and he's the founder of the Black Panther Party in the UK, in Britain. For many people who thought that that was an exclusive dynamic to the United States, nothing can be further than the truth.
The powers in Great Britain didn't quite like your dad.
No,
so much.
not at all.
The powers didn't.
And so he was there.
The powers don't usually like folks that speak truth to them.
No, that's true. Like you. So the thing about that is, yes, he was there, and they eventually had an organization called the Universal Colored People's Association. But to give it more direction, they gravitated to the slogan Black Power. First espoused by Frederick Douglass, but made popular in the 1960s. So right around the same time that Kwame Ture and Charles Hamilton wrote the book Black Power here, right around that same period, he wrote a book called Destroy This Temple about the Black Power movement in Britain. So this was going on simultaneously. But the beautiful thing about Britain, because when we take a look at Malcolm X's autobiography, and he talks about his conversation with Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah, and they say that Ghana is the fountainhead of Pan-Africanism. As we said, off the continent of Africa, Trinidad is a fountainhead for sure, but Britain has an incredible history also. This is where George Padmore cut his teeth. This is where C.L.R. James cut his teeth. So what happened is then you had many of the people who became the preeminent organizers of key liberation movements throughout Africa who first got their orientation through political circles in London. As a matter of fact, their efforts to create the Black Panther Party come 20 years after the 5th Pan-African Congress, which many people consider the most significant, that was organized in Manchester, England in 1945. So they had a springboard to work from. And at the same time, he's always focused on Nigeria. So right around that same period,
Nigeria, where he was born.
Where he was born.
Your father
he was born in Nigeria,
yes.
And they were focusing on the Igbo-Biafran War. Cousins killing cousins, sisters killing sisters, brothers killing brothers. So he wrote this piece called The Murder of Nigeria. And one of the first people to read it outside of England was none other than Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah. And Kwame Nkrumah fell in love with the piece, reached out to him, began to develop a relationship with him. At that time, Nkrumah had just been overthrown by the CIA and British imperialism in Ghana.
The U.S. government wouldn't
on
do
his
anything
way
like that.
to
They wouldn't do anything
Vietnam,
like that.
on his way to Vietnam to present a proposal to end the Vietnam War. So in addition to Muhammad Ali losing his belt, us losing Martin Luther King for dealing with the Vietnam War, we lost modern Africa's first independent nation to defeat colonial rule on the battlefield. We must incorporate that into the discussion when we discuss our position in Vietnam. Now, going back to this, they start working together. So Nkrumah says there's a young man that I just started corresponding
Your dad
with.
and Kwame Nkrumah
started corresponding. Nkrumah had a journal called Africa in the World. He wanted because Nkrumah was a big proponent, as you know, of papers.
Yes.
When he was here in this country and started what we still see today as the African Student Unions at HBCUs and on predominantly white campuses, he created that. They had a paper called The African Interpreter. When he went to Britain, they started a paper called The New African, and of course he created multiple papers during his 9-year run as the president of Ghana. So they created this journal, and he told my father, I want you to meet someone who reminds me a lot of you. His name is Stokely Carmichael at that point. Not too long after that, for those who read Stokely Speaks From Black Power Back to Pan-Africanism, which is Kwame's speeches from about 1966 to 1972, there's a speech in there called The Dialectics of Liberation, which when he spoke in London. And my father and him shared the panel that night, and they were introduced to each other. So from that moment on, they maintained a relationship all the way up till Kwame's passing in November of 1998. And so that's how they got linked together. They were linked together through Nkrumah. Nkrumah, who was also a link between Dr. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. Nkrumah, who was also a link between W.E.B. Du Bois and Marcus Garvey, because Nkrumah, being a philosophy student, said the one book that changed his life was the philosophy and opinions of Marcus Garvey, yet he maintained that Du Bois was the father of Pan-Africanism.
Yeah. You know, I want to come back. We're going to go to break, but I want to come back before we leave this area. I want to touch on your statement that Kwame Nkrumah was the link between Malcolm X and Martin Luther King.
Oh, no question.
When we come back on the Rock Newman Show, from Busboys and Poets, the Langston Hughes Room, we'll be back in a moment.
This is Leprechaun Tim Pohanka from Pohanka Nissan and Pohanka Hyundai. It's hard to be down on your luck when you're Virginia's first choice for new Nissan and Hyundais, but I need to sell 60 cars this week. Right now, I'll pay you big bucks for your good luck. Bring down any good luck charm you've gotten. Based on the sale price of the car you choose, I'll give you up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car this week. Today, your lucky penny is worth plenty, up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car you want. Stop moping and hoping you'll get approved. With my For the People credit approval process, the banks are looking to get lucky and lend to you, even if you've been turned down before. Bring me any good luck charm and I'll give you up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car today. Hurry, once I get rid of 60 cars, the luck runs out. All offers require bank approval, so call us at 1-800-POHANKA, visit Pohanka Nissan and Pohanka Hyundai on Route 1 in Fredericksburg, or better yet, log on to timpohankaforthepeople.com. And when we make a deal, I promise it'll be your lucky day. I'm Tim Pohanka, and I'm a leprechaun for the people.
Hello, everybody. I'm Rock Newman from The Rock Newman Show. And I am absolutely flattered to have as one of my fine advertisers the DMV's greatest corporate citizen. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about the Pohanka Automotive Group. If you have any automotive needs whatsoever, if you want to sell your car, buy a car, trade in your car, have your car serviced, whatever you need, see my good friends at the Pohanka Automotive Group. You will be well taken care of, I promise. I'm Rock Newman. I might be there. Come on down and see our good friends at Pohanka Automotive Group.
And now, the Rock Newman Show.
Welcome back, folks. This is Rock Newman. Today is August the 17th, 2013. My guest in studio at Busboys and Poets in the Langston Hughes room is Obi Egbuna. And we just spent 20 scintillating minutes with him, and we've got, we'll go to the top of the hour here. Before we left, you made mention about Kwame Nkrumah.
Yes.
And that he was the link between several giants in the civil rights movement, the Pan-African movement, and otherwise. You said that Kwame Nkrumah was a link between Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. Please explain.
Oh, very simply. Well, many people don't, unfortunately, don't know that Martin Luther King went to Africa before Malcolm X, and he went to Ghana to celebrate Ghana's independence. This is a very important relationship for us to chronicle and always highlight, because when many people talk about Dr. King, they talk about the influence of Gandhi on him. They talk about the influence of Thoreau on him, but not the influence of Nkrumah on him. And it conveys this message that Africans must look outside their culture, outside their experience for philosophical direction. Nothing can be further from the truth. King being a student of nonviolence, what Nkrumah called positive action, he felt obliged to go there. And he told Nkrumah in their meeting, the same strategy we used in Montgomery to dismantle the bus operation because of racism and segregation, you used the same tactics and made the British Empire come crumbling down in Africa. I have a lot to learn from you. And of course, Malcolm X taking the position, being very critical of the March on Washington, being very critical of nonviolent protest at that time, it shows that he did not have a problem with marching. He did not have a problem with striking, demonstrating, and boycotting, but the target of the efforts. Because if he supports Nkrumah, who used the same tactics King was using in the South, the same tactics that SNCC was using in the South, CORE was using in the South, and they overthrow British colonialism in Ghana, and he says Nkrumah's his favorite president, he goes there and says that Ghana's the fountainhead of Pan-Africanism, that states everything. And interestingly enough, the same way that, and when Malcolm talked, but King, both critical, King in his letter to the Birmingham jail, very suspicious of white liberals, moderates as he called them. Malcolm X saying the only difference between Democrats and Republicans is they're foxes and wolves. Both of them understood we needed political parties of strength. What makes Nkrumah unique is when we take a look at the anti-colonial movement in Africa, he did not establish a movement in Ghana, they established a party, the Convention People's Party, 1949. Right. 3 years before that, Ahmed Sékou Touré in Guinea, who the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan calls his political father, he established a party, the Democratic Party of Guinea. As we're sitting here having this conversation today, this is the 40th anniversary of Amilcar Cabral's assassination, the founder of the Party for the Independence of Guinea and Cape Verde. So here we have three political parties that were the engines behind the anti-colonial movement in three strategic nations in Africa. They did not have movements, they did not have unions, they did not have fronts. They created parties. So Malcolm appreciated that, King created that, but King, Nkrumah is also, like we said, the bridge between Du Bois and Garvey.
Let's pivot a little bit, but not too far. There's something that is very prestigious. It's perceived to be very, very prestigious throughout the land. Mm-hmm. It's called the Rhodes Scholarship.
Oh, okay.
And I'd like to talk about who that was named after.
Ooh.
I'd like to talk about the individual.
Okay.
And if a little bit of research serves me properly, there's someone named Cecil Rhodes.
Yeah. As he liked to say, Cecil John Rhodes.
Cecil John Rhodes, yeah.
Yes.
Tell us about Cecil Rhodes.
Oh, he's the creator of the British South African Company, whose slogan, since we use slogans and mantras in corporate USA, most of them live or die by their slogans. His happened to be from Cape to Cairo. And if you understand Africa geographically, that's the top of Africa to the bottom. So he let it be known that the goal and objective of his company was to conquer all of Africa.
And what kind of company did he have?
It was under the relationship, it was a shipping company, it was a navigation company, it was a company that was supposed to do tourism and explorations and all that. But the true goal of it was to conquer, rape, and plunder Africa. And two countries were named after him. What was Northern Rhodesia then is Zambia today. What was Southern Rhodesia then was Zimbabwe. And he never lived and he's buried in Zimbabwe, but he never lived there. He never went there, but he insisted that he be buried there. And he made his, he hung out in what is called South Africa on the other side of the Limpopo River. So that was his goal. And interestingly enough, people take pride, I think, in the academic aspect of what that scholarship is supposed to entail. But the same way that you would like to see the Redskins' name change, people should consider, in the name of peace, in the name of democracy, in the name of true human rights, they should consider changing that name. We would look at that very favorably as a people.
You write for Zimbabwe
National newspaper, the Herald. Yes, I do.
National newspaper. What is the sentiment of Zimbabweans about, how do they feel about Cecil Rhodes?
Oh, I mean, he's the man that came and orchestrated the conquering of their country. But they feel that it's a process that they had to go through. These are people who look at their interpretation of history as rooted in their fighting spirit. So while they know the atrocities he committed, while they know the atrocities that Ian Smith committed, who said when the Universal Declaration of Independence was established in 1961, and he was asked by a foreign journalist, when will you have a discussion with the black Africans about controlling this land? He said, perhaps in 1,000 years. So how is that different from George Wallace saying segregation today, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever? So they look at it through their fight. So that when they think of Cecil Rhodes, they think of Mbuya Nehanda. Nehanda was a woman that organized the first armed uprising against the British in 1896. And I think this is important for your listeners. In Zimbabwe, the noose is a symbol of resistance, not a symbol of genocide and terrorism. And the reason is because when they hung Nehanda, they asked her, do you have any last words? And she said in the national language of Shona, Mafupa Angu Achu Muka. I'll repeat that, Mafupa Angu Achu Muka, which means in English, my bones will rise. So she was saying, you'll kill me today, but my fighting spirit will live through my people. So it took 84 years, but from 1966 to 1980, they fought a protracted armed struggle against the second most powerful colonial army ever assembled in Africa, and they emerged victorious. So when they look at Cecil Rhodes, they look at him in the context of Nehanda, in the context of Robert Mugabe, Joshua Nkomo, Herbert Chitepo, Josiah Tongogar, and many of the giants who put their life on the line for Zimbabwe to be reclaimed by Africans.
Somewhere shortly after Rhodesia became Zimbabwe.
Yes.
Somewhere, I think it was within the year, because there was a lot of excitement around about the liberation.
Yes.
Of Rhodesia and renaming it Zimbabwe.
Yes.
Robert Mugabe came and spoke on the campus of Howard University.
Oh, yeah.
I was in the audience that day. It was one of the most inspirational messages and speeches that I've ever heard.
Wow.
And he opened I remember at one point during the speech, he opened his arms up and invited everyone in attendance that day. He said, I know all of you won't make it, but I want you to know that you're all invited to come home. Come home.
Yes.
Robert Mugabe now is portrayed as an absolute pariah by what Sarah Palin calls the lamestream media and most other media. Talk to us about Mugabe. Accurate portrayal, terrible portrayal. Talk to us about how he's portrayed here in the West and the realities that he has to deal with at home.
Predictable portrayal, predictable. One of his blessings is he's impervious to the criticism. He knows how he is perceived in Africa. He knows how he's perceived in progressive circles around the world. And he knows that his contemporary, Nelson Mandela, as much as the United States, European Union, EU alliance claims to love him, only removed him from the U.S. List of terrorists a few years ago. This is, so if their favorite head of state, the head of state who they're most politically comfortable with, if he was still considered a terrorist while they were doing photo ops with him, while they were in his living room eating his food, someone like President Mugabe, who has always taken what they consider an extreme position, a defiant position, dealing with the question of land, dealing with the question of self-determination, dealing with the question of foreign policy, he could care less. So they can continue to try to demonize him, but he knows that when it comes to African history, when we will have the last word on our history, Taylor Branch can't have the last word on Martin Luther King. Clint Eastwood can't have the last word on Charlie Parker. So the Washington Post, the Voice of America, the CIA, the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, the Labour Party in Britain, they cannot and will not have the last word on Robert Gabriel Mugabe. That we guarantee.
My wife, a few years ago, just a few years ago, spent about 10 days in Zimbabwe, and on daily she would report about the incredible beauty of the land.
Yes.
She went up to Victoria Falls. I think she went over into Zambia at one point, but she went to Victoria Falls, and it was like it's just one of the most beautiful places on this planet. But in the city, she's pretty sure she stayed in Harare.
Yeah.
She stayed in the capital, and they gave her some money. And she called, and my godson was with her, and she said, "We're both sitting here, and we've got millions of dollars. What's the currency?"
They use dollars, Zim dollars.
We traded like $200, and we're Zim, almost billionaires. We got all of these millions. So the economy continues to teeter and to struggle. To what extent has international policy played on the continual struggle and poverty in Zimbabwe?
In 2001,
in a land so rich.
In 2000, well, first of all, we have to go back to the whole question of since you brought up when you saw President Mugabe. I was in the audience as well. I was a little boy.
I was going to say you had to be.
I was about 11.
Cool.
And what ended up happening is that same day he went to see Ronald Reagan.
Yes.
And Ronald Reagan told him that the Lancaster negotiations would not be honored. For your audience who doesn't know, because of the diplomatic work of Ambassador Andrew Young, then representing the Carter administration, an agreement was brokered between Britain, the United States, and Zimbabwe. At that time, Prime Minister Robert Mugabe and Joshua Nkomo, affectionately referred to his father Zimbabwe because of his role in the liberation struggle there. May he rest in peace. Between 1980 and 1990, the land was supposed to be transferred that the Europeans had occupied to the indigenous people. Carter signed this agreement. Margaret Thatcher signed this agreement. Reagan comes in immediately and says he's under no obligation to honor the agreement since he wasn't an original broker of the agreement. Margaret Thatcher paid overtures to the agreement. John Major paid overtures to the agreement. By the time the Bill Clinton wannabe Tony Blair comes into the equation, he says he will not honor the agreement. So what happens is we're 20 years removed, which is, as South Africa is approaching its 20th year of flag independence, people must pay attention. President Mugabe was, he saw an intensification of criticism, tactical criticism, that this issue needed to be addressed.
And so, not an honoring of, I'm going to use
no,
this term,
no,
not an honoring of the treaty.
Exactly.
Right,
not,
right.
And interestingly,
somewhere in history, in the United States history, that has happened before.
Oh yes, and interestingly enough, as we know, for Africans, bashing Republicans is almost as much of a tradition as turkeys on Thanksgiving and fireworks on the 4th of July. Yet, through Reagan's 2 terms, we say nothing. Jesse Jackson's campaigns, 84 to 88, that's not a priority on his foreign policy agenda. Everything we were doing is like we were ignoring this. So in 2000, their backs are against the wall. They aggressively developed a campaign called the Land Reclamation Program. President Mugabe isn't even in the country, by the way. He's in Cuba at the G77 summit. Our people start showing up saying, could you please exit my great-grandmother's house? You know, so this eventually happens. And the response from the United States is to create the Zimbabwe Democracy and Economic Recovery Act of 2001, sanctions. And Britain, of course, initiated it. The United States followed suit. Bush walked it through the White House. The late Congressman Donald Payne of the Congressional Black Caucus, he walks it through Congress. John Kerry walks it through the Senate. Hillary Clinton walks it through the Senate. No member of the Congressional Black Caucus voted against the sanctions. 5 abstained. Cynthia McKinney, Corrin Brown, the late Stephanie Tubbs Jones, Carolyn Kilpatrick, and Bobby Rush.
Did not vote.
Not one Congressional Black. They came 5 votes short of voting unanimously.
Right.
The 5 abstained. 9 Republicans of European ancestry voted against it, and 2 Democrats. People can look it up. So this compromised Zimbabwe, the same sanctioning that has left 2 million people dead in Iraq, 500,000 children since 1990, the same type of sanctioning in the form of a blockade imposed on Cuba by the Kennedy administration that has cost Cuba $100 billion since 1962. Money that could go towards their free education program, their free health care program, and whatnot. So the objective was to implode Zimbabwe's economy, compromise the agriculture infrastructure, compromise the educational system, which Zimbabwe has Africa's highest literacy rate, 97%. So and compromise their efforts in their courageous fight against HIV/AIDS, where in the region ravaged by the pandemic, as you know, they've had the most significant decline since 2000. But the United States and Britain blocked their access to Global Fund, and their applications in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 6th round of this century were rejected. So this was diplomatic terrorism. The Bush administration maintained the policy, and unfortunately, the Obama administration and President Obama's first 4 years extended the sanctions every March in 2008, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And based on Kerry's attack of the elections, the most significant political defeat that our former colonial masters have experienced in Africa, by the way, this century so far, they discredited the elections, even though they told Andrew Young personally, if the elections aren't violent and if the elections are democratic, they'll lift the sanctions. But we knew that they weren't going to do that. It'll only come when we pressure them to do so.
Folks, we attempt to bring you the truth. It might be a harsh truth, but on the Rock Newman Show, we try to give you the real truth. We'll be back in just a moment. Hello to all my friends in the DMV. I am Rock Newman from the Rock Newman Show. I want to tell you about the MGM Grand National Harbor, the most exciting project to come to the District, Maryland, or Virginia in quite some time. You're going to have great fun. Come on down, support this project with all you have. It is going to be wonderful for the area. We're going to increase our tax base. We're going to get funding for the police department, for ambulance, for fire, for education. It is really a project that is going to benefit our area. Folks, we want to support in a very strong DMV kind of way this great project from the MGM Grand National Harbor.
drives a pole handcuff.
The weekend is here, and no matter what the weather's like outside, you'll find the deals inside here in the beautiful showroom of the all-new Pohanka Hyundai in Capitol Heights during their giant Markdown Madness sale.
Smart shoppers know that every new Hyundai in Pohanka comes with Hyundai Assurance and America's best 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. But why don't you tell them about the markdown sale, Joe?
I'll be happy to, Kim. Folks, shop around on the web, and you'll see lease payments on a new 2013 Elantra GLS at $179 a month. Today at Pohanka Hyundai, $99 a month. That's right, a $99 payment on a brand new Elantra.
And $89 a month on a new 2013 Accent GLS Automatic. How do they do it, Joe?
It must be the volume, Kim. A brand new building, hundreds of new Hyundais, and Pohanka's low payment and easy credit programs are designed to get everybody driving. But you have to get here today. Rush to the giant Markdown Madness sale at exit 13 off the Capitol Beltway.
Pohanka Hyundai, king of the Beltway. All financing for a limited term on approved HMF credit.
My baby drives a pole handcuff.
And now, the Rock Newman Show.
Welcome back, folks. This will be our final segment with Obi Egbuna. Coming up in the next hour, we're going to be celebrating again 55 years of love and half smokes. The story of Ben's Chili Bowl, the iconic restaurant on U Street in Northwest Washington, D.C. That, when I say iconic, it has become international. It has become internationally famous. It is a tourist attraction. Barack Hussein Obama won the presidency in 2008, and about 2 minutes after he won the presidency, he was at Ben's Chili Bowl having a half smoke. You go by there, you see Barack Obama, celebrities all over the world. They're having a anniversary celebration on Thursday that is going to be hosted by Bill Cosby, and we're going to have coming up in the 11 o'clock hour. Virginia Ali, who is the matriarch, who has been there from the very beginning. She's been through the trials and tribulations, and now has an operation that is truly an international icon. But we're going to continue here with Obi Egbuna, who's a teacher, a journalist, and a children's playwright. And you wrote something called Same Neighborhood. It references and deals with Colin Powell and Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture.
Yes.
Tell us about that book, why you did it, what you hoped to communicate with that initiative.
Well, yes, it was a children's play, not yet a book yet. We've done 7. We have a children's history and theater company called Mass Emphasis, children between 5 and 18 years old, where we simply use theater as a vehicle to teach them their history. That was our 6th play. It's called Same Neighborhood, Different Perspectives, a conversation between General Colin Powell and Kwame Ture. The original inspiration for it was in 1995, I was riding with Kwame he was invited to speak by the Black Student Union at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. And when we picked him up at the airport, we had a Santana tape in the car. And it was Santana playing Olatunji's rendition of the Yoruba song from the classic 1964 Drums of Passion album. And Kwame was like, is that Olatunji or Santana? And I said, that's Santana. And he was like, oh, you got to go to the root. And so I just started laughing, and I told him that both tapes were on my dresser. And I originally wanted to bring the Olatunji, but I snatched the Santana tape by mistake.
Right.
And he told me then, he said, you know, young blood, he said, this Pan-African stuff that we're talking about politically, it's been in our culture long before we're trying to catch up.
Yeah.
And so at some point, I just realized that one of the biggest struggles that we have as a people is to make our cultural and political expression synonymous. And so this is how, through working in the classroom for 23 years now, we have found theater to be perhaps the most engaging method to expose our young people to this history. Notice we said exposure, because if there's a thinner line than the line between love and hate, it's the line between exposure and imposition. We seek to impose nothing on our children, but expose them to all that we're capable of exposing them to. So we decided to do this play because we know that the 2 most decorated traditions in our community, if you will, are the church and the military. probably the best Jekyll Hyde scenario, politically speaking, you'll find anywhere we are in the world. So we wanted to look at how Africans get exposed to those institutions, but at the same time, our most sacred tradition is our tradition of resistance. So Kwame Ture, amongst his generation, is arguably the symbol of our tradition of resistance, arguably the finest organizer we've ever produced out of the student movement. Yeah. And when you look at the lineage of people we've had come out of the student movement, that's really a bold statement to make, but this is the sentiment of so many.
Sure.
And Colin Powell, of course, going through City College, not being as academically blessed as Kwame was, right, but going through City College, eventually getting into the military, going through, catching the heels of Korea, 2 tours in Vietnam, graduate of the National War College, ending up doing what he's done in the world, and Kwame Ture ending up doing what he did in the world. Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, honorary chairman of the Black Panther Party, Central Committee of the All African People's Revolutionary Party.
If I can stop you right there, because as an admirer of Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, I've just gone back and Googled him and looked at some of the YouTube stuff. In 1964 or thereabouts, might have been 65. I have to go back and take a look. Stokely Carmichael was in Mississippi, standing up with folks that were standing on the perimeter, the policeman, knowing that he was a target, and was standing up in that state that wasn't giving Fannie Lou Hamer or anybody else the right to vote without putting them through hell. Kwame Ture was standing up and saying Black Power.
Yes, 66.
Now, to put that in perspective,
right,
the kind of courage, the kind of willingness to represent and fight for the liberation of his people, knowing that any second he could get killed because he was speaking a truth to power that didn't have any problem killing you and throwing you in a swamp.
And in the context of this play, many people talk about the slogan Black Power, first coined by Frederick Douglass, but popularized by Kwame Ture and Mukasa Dada, then known as Willie Ricks at that juncture. But they had SNCC had 2 slogans bolder than that. Hell no, we won't go.
Absolutely.
And victory to Ho Chi Minh. So they were saying not only was the war in Vietnam wrong, an abomination, but they wanted the Vietnamese to emerge victorious. And what has been conveniently omitted from our history, Brother Rock, is that it was SNCC who pushed Dr. Martin Luther King to come out against Vietnam, because their entrance into that effort is the assassination of Sammy Young Jr. in Tuskegee in January of '66, as you know. And then he had just come a few years, medically discharged from the military, joining SNCC, shot at Standard Oil gas station for using a white-only bathroom. And they were saying, if we can't fight in the if we can't get treated like human beings in this country, why would we represent this country abroad?
Which certainly was the philosophy for why Muhammad Ali didn't step forward.
Exactly. And SNCC and SCLC provided the safety net. And interestingly enough, when Kwame Ture, which he considered one of the biggest honors of his life, had audience with none other than Ho Chi Minh, it was Ho Chi Minh that told him Marcus Garvey's passion for Africa, as his birthday is tomorrow, Marcus Garvey's passion for Africa made me realize I must have the same patriotism to Vietnam. And Ho Chi Minh spent time with Garvey in Harlem in the 20s, embraced the nationalist and Pan-Africanist sentiment of Garvey and applied it to the Vietnamese situation, and taught the people of Vietnam that the world won't be free till Africa's free. So of course, but at the same time, Colin Powell did 2 tours in Vietnam. Kwame Ture was a friend of Maurice Bishop, for example, as we sit here on the 30th anniversary of his assassination. Colin Powell presented Ronald Reagan with the gun that assassinated Maurice Bishop. So we just wanted to show that how you have 2 people that grew up in the same neighborhood, 4 years apart, Colin Powell born in 1937, Kwame Ture, born in 1941, could be on two opposing sides of the spectrum. And as a community where we're discussing sporadic violence rooted in self-hatred, what's going on in Chicago, what's going on in Detroit, people who will not hesitate to condemn that, or the Bloods and Crips in Los Angeles, they consider it they consider it honorable for us to go to Africa and bomb Africa, go to Asia and bomb Asia, go to Latin America and bomb Asia. And because Truman, understanding the strategic advantages of desegregating the military, we got trapped and moved in that direction. And Kwame lets you know he did the same thing that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad did when they tried to force him into World War II. He did the same thing that A. Philip Randolph did when he spoke out against World War I. He did the same thing that Paul Robeson did, putting his career on the line, going from making $200,000 a year back then to around $6,000 a year because of his condemnation of U.S. foreign policy. And if we're going to be Pan-African like we talked about, all it simply means is we're no longer politically domesticated, like a cat is domesticated or a dog is domesticated. We want to be natural, in the wild, if you will, and embrace who we really are. And real quickly, what I wanted to say is SNCC's headquarters were across the street from Ben's Chili Bowl.
Right.
And Kwame Ture used to always talk about the two places where he could always be fed.
That's right.
Was at Ben's and Florida Avenue Grill around the corner.
Absolutely.
So I thought it was, I will
bring that up. I will bring that up in the next hour.
His other play mother, Annie Green, down the street in Islander.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Always took care of SNCC.
Yeah.
See, when you fight for the people feed you.
You know, I was in Libya, and two of the most profound feelings that I had was one that was extraordinarily surreal. When we got a call, we were watching CNN. It was when Michael Jackson passed away. I think that was 2009. I think that was June of 2009. Well, we were watching the events unfold on CNN while one of his closest confidants and associates was calling the group that I was with.
Wow.
And we got the news that he was dead before it came across the wire on CNN, and it was from the person that was standing with Michael's lifeless body. And so that was sort of being far away in the desert and seeing this, American entertainment icon, hearing about his death before it became news was a really Twilight Zone surreal kind of experience. That was one feeling I had. The other, I visited CERT, where Muammar Gaddafi had convened the Organization of African Unity.
Right.
And heads of states from all of the African countries were there. And they were talking about creating a currency that would be rooted and secured by the earth, by what's in the ground, and for it to be the most secure and powerful economic force on the planet.
Yes.
And the feeling that I had, amongst other things, amongst very much relaxing the borders between countries on the continent of Africa. So their whole immigration idea is to become ultimately one Africa.
Exactly.
Not just a conglomerate of independent countries, but one Africa.
Yes, sir.
And the feeling that I had was that this will get you killed.
Yeah. Yes.
And I came back, and in a short time, I saw things happen where ultimately Gaddafi was killed and drawn through the streets.
Now, the interesting thing about that is, when I was a student at UDC, before I graduated, we organized a press conference in this country that gave the Libyans an opportunity to give their take on the bombing in Lockerbie, Scotland, when it first became an issue. Yeah. So, but long before I dealt with the issue of Zimbabwe, around the same time we were doing work around what's called South Africa with the 3 liberation movements. There are exiles here. work we were doing in Guinea, work we were doing around Somalia. We definitely did work in Libya, but interestingly enough, my point of reference to Libya is my father, because my father, in addition to the work you talked about earlier, my father had the opportunity under the administration of Murtala Muhammad in Nigeria to be the director of ECBS, the national television station.
Yes.
And in the 1970s, Muammar Gaddafi organized a conference in Libya, and the theme of the conference was the role of media in the decolonization process. And he was talking about financing Africa having one central television station, one central radio station. This is in the 70s now. We're talking 75, 76. So people's sentiment was because he wanted to undertake that project, death would be at his doorstep. So we had an idea when we saw him at the United Nations, the only time he ever came, and many people were wondering why he took 2 hours. They felt that he was grandstanding. But he was trying to convey a message to the world that he knew that he was next on the list. And even though the United States gave the impression that they wanted to normalize relations, they had an intersection here in the Watergate Hotel. The Corporate Council on Africa had sent some businesses there in 2003 to try to develop a relationship. He already knew because, interestingly enough, when you go back to Nkrumah's time in power, when Nkrumah came to this country as the president of Ghana for the first time, the very first person to meet him at the airport was none other than Milton Hershey. He takes Nkrumah to the Hershey plant in Pennsylvania. You know, subliminally, I want access to your cocoa.
I was going to say, that had a little something to do with the cocoa.
And then, Brother Rock, when they drop Nkrumah back off in New York, guess what's there? A limo waiting to take him to the Waldorf Astoria because the New York Cocoa Board of Trade had a reception in his honor. So for any African head of state who is truly committed to their people and truly feels that the human resource must control the material resource, because one of the things you heard Kwame Ture say many times is the biggest contradiction of all is Africans are the poorest people in the world, yet we are products of the richest continent on earth. So we know this is what happened to, what happened to Colonel Gaddafi happened. And at a time where the attacks on Zimbabwe intensify, Zimbabwe just found out a few years ago they have 25% of the world's diamonds. And they have the distinction of being the only country in Africa ever to be accused of blood diamonds where there is no war or there is no military conflict. But the same way we're not going to let Global Witness have the last word on blood diamonds, because they're not going to talk about Oppenheimer and De Beers and the Anglo-American Corporation, the true bandits when it comes to the question of diamonds.
Obi, they always say, leave your audience waiting for more and wanting more. I'm telling you, man, we could go on, but unfortunately the clock has put us up against the wall. We've got to go out. Thank you so very much.
And I sincerely hope that the time we spent together, you were pleased as the host and your listeners are pleased.
This is a very informative, and I'm pleased.
All the time.
Back in a moment with the matriarch from Ben's Chili Bowl, celebrating 55 years of love and half smoke and feeding folks like Bill Cosby and Kwame Ture and Barack Hussein Obama. You're going to talk to her next on The Rock Newman Show.
This is Leprechaun Tim Pohanka from Pohanka Nissan and Pohanka Hyundai. It's hard to be down on your luck when you're Virginia's first choice for new Nissan and Hyundais, but I need to sell 60 cars this week. Right now, I'll pay you big bucks for your good luck. Bring down any good luck charm you've gotten. Based on the sale price of the car you choose, I'll give you up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car this week. Today, your lucky penny is worth plenty, up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car you want. Stop moping and hoping you'll get approved. With my For the People credit approval process, the banks are looking to get lucky and lend to you, even if you've been turned down before. Bring me any good luck charm and I'll give you up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car today. Hurry, once I get rid of 60 cars, the luck runs out. All offers require bank approval, so call us at 1-800-POHANKA, visit Pohanka Nissan and Pohanka Hyundai on Route 1 in Fredericksburg, or better yet, log on to TimPohankaForThePeople.com. And when we make a deal, I promise it'll be your lucky day. I'm Tim Pohanka, and I'm a leprechaun for the people.
My baby drives a Pohanka.
The weekend is here, and no matter what the weather's like outside, you'll find the deals inside here in the beautiful showroom of the all-new Pohanka Hyundai in Capitol Heights during their giant Markdown Madness sale.
Smart shoppers know that every new Hyundai in Pohanka comes with Hyundai Assurance and America's best 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. But why don't you tell them about the markdown sale, Joe?
I'll be happy to, Kim. Folks, shop around on the web, and you'll see lease payments on a new 2013 Elantra GLS at $179 a month. Today at Pohanka Hyundai, $99 a month. That's right, a $99 payment on a brand new Elantra.
And $89 a month on a new 2013 Accent GLS Automatic. How do they do it, Joe?
It must be the volume, Kim. A brand new building, hundreds of new Hyundais, and Pohanka's low payment and easy credit programs are designed to get everybody driving. But you have to get here today. Rush to the giant Markdown Madness sale at exit 13 off the Capitol Beltway.
Pohanka Hyundai, king of the Beltway. All financing for a limited term on approved HMF credit.
My baby drives a Pohanka.
And now, the Rock Newman Show.
Welcome back, folks, to the last hour of the Rock Newman Show from the Langston Hughes Room at Busboys and Poets, 14th and V Street, Northwest Washington, D.C. Do we have a fun hour coming up this hour? We are blessed to have as our guest Nizam Ali and Virginia Ali. You've heard me refer to Virginia Ali as being the matriarch of Ben's Chili Bowl. And this coming Thursday, the 22nd, is that yes, the 22nd of August, they're celebrating 55 years of love and half smoke. And this establishment, Ben's Chili Bowl, has become an international icon. It has been a place of gathering for common folks and for presidents, dignitaries, and celebrities, literally from around the world. It has become a tourist attraction. If you come to Washington, D.C. and don't go to Ben's Chili Bowl, then you've missed something that is absolutely indigenous and an important part of Washington, D.C.'s culture. Matriarch Ali, you pretty lady, welcome to the Rock Newman Show.
Good morning, Rock. It's good
to see you.
Thank
and
you.
And Nizam, same to you.
Thank
you ain't so pretty.
Oh, I got to deal with it.
How fascinating to have you all here on your 55th anniversary. What I do with my guests is I always want my listening audience to be aware not just of what you're doing now, but who you are. And so, Virginia, if I can go to you first, please, Mrs. Ali, tell us your background. Where were you born? Where did you grow up?
Rural Virginia, Tappahannock, Virginia, actually. Spent my formative years there. Went to Virginia Union in Richmond, then came on to Washington. After
How old were you when you came to D.C.?
21.
You were 21 years old when you came to D.C.
My first job was Industrial Bank of Washington.
At the National Bank of Washington?
Industrial
Bank. Industrial Bank, absolutely.
It was the only minority bank back then in those
Yes.
days. Yes.
Yes.
And we could only apply for work in a minority bank. But growing up, I grew up on a farm. My dad had a 350-acre farm. So I grew up doing farm things and working in the home and until college, and then coming on to Washington after that, and working at Industrial Bank, which was where I learned that I love working with people. I love the public.
Now, so you working at Industrial Bank, started there when you were 21 years old after Virginia Union, the University College down in Virginia. Virginia Union's in Richmond.
Richmond.
In Richmond, Virginia. So you come to the big city, come to D.C., you're working at the bank. Tell us about the very first time you met that guy named Ben Ali.
Oh, that was kind of fun. Ben came from Trinidad.
Yes.
And Ben had come to this country to matriculate university, and his first college was at Nebraska, University of Nebraska. After that, came to Howard to go to the dental school.
To do what?
Go to dental school.
To go to dental school.
Yes, right. I think maybe a year and a half, and he was in the dental program, and he'd injured his back stepping onto an elevator when the floor wasn't there. So he injured his back severely and was not able to complete that program. But in the meantime, he'd worked his way through college by working in restaurants, starting with mopping the floors, doing the dishes, and worked on up to being a maitre d' right here in D.C.'s big restaurants. So he knew the restaurant business, and when I met him, he was working in a restaurant just up here on U Street. And he was coming to the bank, and I saw him, and he saw me, but then one day he decided to become bold enough to write a little note on a quarter wrapper.
On what?
A quarter, 25-cent quarter wrapper. And he just simply said, "Please call me." His name.
I was getting ready to say, I want to know what went on that wrapper.
He said, "Please call me Ben Alley," and he put the phone number. Well, of course, in those days, if you were a lady, you didn't call a man you didn't know. So, of course, I didn't call him. I wanted to.
Yeah.
But no.
Because he was a handsome dude.
Yeah, he was cool. Yes, he was cool. And the bank closed at 2. Well, by 3, I had not called. So he, being the kind of arrogant guy that he was, called and said, "This is Ben Alley. Why didn't you call me?"
How dare you not call me?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I said, "Because I don't know you. I don't call strange men." Well, in the conversation, we realized that we knew the same
He said,
people.
I don't call strange men.
Exactly.
Okay, come on now.
But in the conversation, we knew the same people. So on our first date, he brought Basil Keene, who was in dental school, Dr. Basil Keene. Now, he's deceased now, but he was a classmate. And by this time, he'd graduated. He brought Dr. Basil Keene to introduce Ben to me and my aunt, with whom I lived at the time.
Right.
And that was the way we met.
That's the way you met?
That's the way we met. He was a character now. He was definitely a character.
And how long before it got serious?
Well, we were married a year and a half later.
Really?
A year and a half later. On our first date, I think something about this quirky personality of his. When he asked where I would like to have dinner, I mentioned the name of a restaurant that I wanted to go to. So, okay, he drives along and he misses the turn.
He what?
He missed the turn to go to that particular restaurant. And I said, "Wait, you missed the turn. It's this way." He goes, "I'm not taking you someplace someone else has already taken you."
Pardon me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought, I liked his little personality and his confidence. And even his cockiness, I guess.
So a year and a half after he says, "Call me."
Right.
You guys get married.
We got married.
Where did you get married?
Now the story, my family were Christians. I was brought up in the Christian church, and we were very avid churchgoers. And my minister in Washington, I attended Plymouth Congregational Church here with my aunt, and the minister there became friends. He and his wife became friends of ours. And when we were ready to be married, I asked him to perform the ceremony. He said he'd like to come over and talk to me, and he did. And when he found out Ben was Muslim, he said, "I can't do this."
Oh, wow.
No, I can't do this.
How did your family down in Virginia, you met this guy who's a Muslim from Trinidad.
Foreign land.
And their pretty little daughter was up here. How did they take to that?
My parents were wonderful people. My dad had just such a way with us. He just kind of put the responsibility on us. And when I went to him and told him my interests and what I wanted to do, he said, "Honey, we raised you well.
Yeah.
And if you think this is the right decision for you, it's all right with us." Now, I was 24 years old and working. But that's what he said.
But the minister initially said, "I can't do this."
And didn't.
And didn't?
No, he didn't. The state of Virginia said, "No, you're a mixed couple, won't do it." So we got married in the judge's chambers. Judge Beard married us.
Okay, and so you get married, and this was what year?
1958, same year we opened the church.
I was getting ready to say 1958. That's when when Ben's Chili Bowl opened.
Exactly.
So, did you guys talk a lot about that and sort of sweat and debate over it? Was it just something that happened pretty easily? Tell us about the formation. Come on, my folks need to know about the formation of this giant.
Well, he tried many other types of businesses after not having the problem with dental school. So he tried a few things, and then he said, "Okay, we're going to try to open a restaurant."
Right.
And of course, where would you open a restaurant if you were African American or if you were a person of color?
Right.
U Street.
Yes.
U Street, because that's where the happenings were.
Yeah. You know, Virginia, when you said you sort of asked that question, you said, where else would you open a restaurant? Because that's what was happening.
Right.
Tell my audience in 1958, when you talk about U Street, tell them about U Street 1958. What was along there?
U Street was just absolutely fabulous. It was known as Black Broadway. There were 3 theaters, one next door to the Chili Bowl, the Lincoln. The Republic was in the next block, and the Booker T in the following block.
Yes.
The Howard Theater was around the corner.
I said with Howard Theater just a few blocks away.
Howard University, just a few blocks away.
Yeah.
Jazz clubs.
Yeah.
White tablecloth restaurants.
Yeah.
You could get Smithfield ham and champagne at Harrison's.
Bohemian Room.
Bohemian Caverns.
Yeah, Bohemian Caverns, right.
Yes,
right,
exactly.
Right.
And it was a place where, when you go out in the evenings, you knew everybody. Everybody knew you. It was just a very close-knit, classic community. I remember going to work on a day as warm as today with high-heel shoes and white cotton gloves. Yes.
At the bank?
Going to the bank to work.
Wow.
Hats were worn at church by ladies. Jeans were worn only by farmers, Rock.
Jeans were worn only by farmers.
It was a very durable fabric, right? Ladies didn't wear pants in the street.
Right.
We didn't even sit out front on our little row house front porch with a curler in our hair.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
And so for folks who are listening here in 2013, 55 years later, let me repeat that. You, on a regular basis, would go to work at the bank wearing high heels and white gloves.
Right.
Oh, yes. I know you was a pretty young thing.
Well, there was so much pride in the community.
Right.
And there was a close-knit community. It was a close-knit community. You knew everybody. When we opened the Chili Bowl, you just get to know the neighbors. They're supportive. The community is supportive of each other. And we just looked after each other.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
We're going to come back in just a moment and talk about the early years of Ben's Chili Bowl and who are some of the folks that came through there of real note lately. Nizam, I'm definitely going to get to you.
No worries.
So
I just love hearing this. This is great.
You can't hear too much, right?
Can't hear too much.
We'll be back in a few moments on The Rock Newman Show. Hello, everybody. I'm Rock Newman from The Rock Newman Show. And I am absolutely flattered to have as one of my fine advertisers the DMV's greatest corporate citizen. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about the Pohanka Automotive Group. If you have any automotive needs whatsoever, if you want to sell your car, buy a car, trade in your car, have your car serviced, whatever you need, see my good friends at the Pohanka Automotive Group. You will be well taken care of, I promise. I'm Rock Newman. I might be there. Come on down and see our good friends at Pohanka Automotive Group.
And now, the Rock Newman Show.
Welcome back to the Rock Newman Show, folks. Today, again, is Saturday, August the 17th, 2013. We're broadcasting from Busboys and Poets in the Langston Hughes Room at 14th and V Street, Northwest Washington, D.C. And my guest this hour, Nizam Ali and Virginia Ali. Virginia is the patriarch of the great institution, the iconic institution, Ben's Chili Bowl. Okay, we walked up through 1958. You and your husband, Ben, got married. You opened Ben's Chili Bowl in an area at the time that was aptly called Black Broadway. Really. I mean, Washington, D.C.'s history with the Duke Ellingtons of the world, and Langston Hughes and those types, folks really don't, so many of our youngsters don't have any appreciation for that really legendary time. Yeah. It was a slice of America that I think really deserves to be chronicled in a way, whether, I don't know whether that's going to be a movie, it's going to be, you know, sort of the definitive book or whatever. I remember, and at the time, I didn't know when you opened, but my first time there, my aunt lived up the street and had a jewelry store. And I remember that she took the first movie I ever saw, I was 10 years old. It was Tarzan Comes to New York at the Lincoln Theater. And when I went in the Lincoln Theater, I remember this aroma coming from this place next door. And I, looked up and was like, Ben's. She's like, my aunt was like, okay, yeah, well, just calm down. We're going to go there afterwards. And I came over there and, although a lot of people weren't familiar with half smoked, I was, because I grew up in the country, and sometimes my mother cooked us half smoked for breakfast. So I went in there, man, and got this half smoked, and I've been loving Ben's ever since. So thank you very much.
Pleasure, indeed.
So tell me about, you opened the restaurant. What was it like? Who were your clients? How soon was it before you really started to see, business come where this looked like it was going to be a success?
Ben said when I suggested maybe I shouldn't quit my job.
Right.
And just see how things go for a little while. He said, oh, no, we will make it, even if we have to sell the car, give up the apartment, build a shower in the back, and bring in a bed.
It was
going to work.
It was no question. This was going to be it. This was going to be successful. It was going to work.
Well, it didn't ever come to that point, but this was still a segregated city. Yeah. And so if Nat King Cole performed down at the Casino Royale, he didn't eat down there. Yeah. Unless he ate in the back. Wow. So the entertainers, Billy Eckstine, they all came to U Street.
Nat King Cole.
Nat King Cole, yeah, Billy Eckstine, Sarah Vaughan, all of them.
Yeah, people down at that could perform at the Howard Theater, which was
they could perform at the Howard, and they performed also at, as I said, at the Royal Casino Royale on 14th Street. Yeah, that's where I saw. I saw him at the Howard, Nat King Cole, but it was a time when they would come back to U Street because that was home. Right. Come back to U Street and hang out, and we were open until 4 o'clock in the morning on weekends, as we are again now. Yes. So entertainers, the clubs closed at 2. The entertainers were out, and they'd come on up on U Street, hang out at the Chili Bowl or the jazz clubs. And that's how that entertainment crew came about, I think. It was a good hot dog, Rock. Yes. So the word gets out, I remember when Kathy Hughes took over WOL. I don't know what year that was. It was a little bit later, maybe
I think
in the 60s.
It was like 79,
you think that
maybe
late?
80. At 80 at the latest.
I don't think it was that late. Maybe in this, maybe 70s, early 70s, I would think. Mm-hmm. But I remember when she converted that station, and those DJs were like movie stars. Yes. So we were one of the first to entertain on WL when Kathy took that station over.
To advertise.
I think we were their first 52-week contract. Their full full-year
right.
contract for advertising.
Yeah, you know what? I've heard Kathy tell that story.
She talks with pride about that.
Absolutely,
It's really nice.
I've heard her tell that story.
So on a weekend when whichever DJ was not on the air, they'd come to the Chili Bowl, and they were like stars. The Soul Finger, the Tall Tan Texan.
Yes.
You know, they just come and hang out and mingle with people,
Right.
which was good for us and good for WL.
Yeah. You opened in 58, and in 63, there was the March on Washington, which this week we're celebrating 50 years of.
Yeah.
What are your memories of the March on Washington? Did you get any of the crowd from the March on Washington?
Of course. Actually, we were even able to provide some hot dogs for some of the folks that came in town early. We have friends that knew groups that were coming in together by the bus, and sometimes we could come in, we could just stop by and pick up 50 or 60 hot dogs or whatever. We were there to the lead up when H. Rap Brown was talking about burn, baby, burn. If we don't get equality for our people.
Sure.
Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Torrey,
Yeah.
was in the office across the street.
One of his aides for 10 years was just on before you and talked about Stokely saying how much he enjoyed having his office across the street because he could always come to Ben's.
Well, he was there every day. He was a wonderful person. I thoroughly enjoyed him.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, he was responsible for our employees having permits to come to work during the riot evenings, you know, when the curfew was in effect.
Yes.
Mayor Washington had imposed a curfew.
Yeah.
Well, you were supposed to be off the street. We had employee permits for the employees to come to work and stay until closing time.
And Stokely helped with that process?
Stokely saw the commander and made that possible, in addition to the police officials, of course.
Right.
City officials.
Right. See,
But
that's
yes, he
history.
did.
Right.
That's real history.
Yes,
So
he
as the
did.
city was shut down,
Yes.
we were allowed to remain open on regular hours because people needed a place to eat.
Yes.
And a place to meet.
Right.
And a place to kind of figure out how do we stop this violence. Or
Yeah,
how do we,
and
how do we
what
pull
you're
things
talking
back
about
together?
now is I had mentioned the March on Washington in 63. Of course, Martin Luther King gave the I Have a Dream speech.
Yes.
But now we've jumped ahead 5 years, and we're talking about after he was shot.
Yeah.
And
right,
what was going
exactly.
on
That's
then.
what happened
Correct.
during the assassination, yeah. But during the march, people were in town, so many people, over 250,000 people were here.
Yes.
So, of course, they were coming up to the Chili Bowl.
Right.
And we were fortunate to be able to go down there for a little while to hear we at least heard Dr. King's speech. So many people spoke and they were entertainers.
Did you go to that?
I did, but I mean, you're like lost in the crowd. There's so many people. We didn't go early.
But you were out there that day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Mahalia Jackson singing, and
Sure.
Peter, Paul, and Mary. And it was just an amazing time to see the mix of people.
Right.
Black people, white people, poor people, rich people, all kinds of people.
So talking about the march and being there amongst, the multitudes, Virginia, what was, as you say, Mahalia Jackson's on stage, Peter, Paul, and Mary's on stage. There is a conglomeration of people of all colors, all hues. Describe the feeling that day.
Well, it just was a feeling of exuberance. I mean, you just were happy to be there. You were happy to see that this has to make a change. This has to change this country.
Right.
This has to change the voting rights bill.
Right.
It has to.
Right.
And we came away with that very strong affirmative feeling.
Mm-hmm. So it's a time of real hope.
A time of real hope, indeed. Yeah.
And so now, we move forward. We move forward to the time, when Martin Luther King got shot. And there was such despair, there was such anger, there was such violence. During those times where there was rioting and looting, take us back to, those days and how you felt as a proprietor there on U Street when things were burning down all around you.
Frightened. We were afraid.
Yeah.
We just don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
There are gangs of young people. Everywhere you go, there were gangs of young people. You look out the door and you see the National Guard with this big weapon right in front of your door. And I remember opening the closet where the circuit breakers are to turn the lights on in the evening. Tear gas popped right in your eyes. Yeah.
Someone shot tear gas in?
There was tear gas in that little closet. I don't know how it got there.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if it's because they were doing it outside, someone opened the door. I don't know. I just felt that burning sensation in my eyes.
Yeah.
But it was a scary time, and yet, I mean, we had this banner made up, or actually we did chalk on the window, Soul Brother, to identify our business as a black business.
Yeah.
We weren't the only business that did that, but no one touched us.
Yeah, you know what? During that time, I remember coming up from the country, coming up into the city, and nearby there was a Chinese restaurant, and I'll never forget the sign on his window say "Me Soul Brother Too." I think he was spared also.
Yeah.
You know what I'd like to do here? I'd like to take a leap, kind of like a time capsule, because we're talking about 1968. Let's fast forward for a minute. We'll come back. But let's fast forward to a minute. 40 years. 2008. Barack Hussein Obama is elected president of the United States of America. And of all of my years and times of being in D.C., whether it was a Howard homecoming, Howard University homecoming, whatever it might have been, I don't think I've ever seen U Street more packed than it was during his cold inauguration. I came by in absolute amazement. I got lucky and I found a parking space on V Street. I thought there might have been some sort of real disturbance going on because folks who don't know the lay of the land here, of course, you've got U Street and you've got V Street. And Ben sits between 12th and 13th Street. And there's an alley next to the property on both sides. I saw these people lined up the alley from U Street, where the entrance is to Ben's, back out to where I was parking on V Street. And I was like, what is going on?
And it was cold.
It's very cold.
In the bitter cold. And there were these folks that were lined up. It warmed my heart because I cheated. I came in the line, and somebody in Ben's knew this old mug here and let me in. But it was one of the most amazing sights, that folks out there shivering in the cold, waiting to get into this institution that has become known worldwide. Both of you, Nizam, I'll ask you first. How did that make you feel?
In one way, it made us feel bad because we didn't want people standing out there in the cold that long.
Yeah.
I asked a customer, and I said, how long did you have to wait? They said about 2.5 hours. And I felt bad.
Yeah.
You know, I hate for people to have to wait that long. But it was amazing. But it was so much bigger than us. It wasn't about us that time.
Right.
It was about Barack Obama.
Yeah.
And it's just that feeling. It wasn't the line. It wasn't the business. It wasn't the money. It was, this inauguration is happening. And he is going to be sworn in as president. And it was that time.
It was just that. Just a wonderful, wonderful feeling. I mean, everybody was happy.
Yeah.
Even the cold didn't seem to bother them.
Yeah.
We were all just happy.
And we're talking cold. I mean, we're talking cold,
you know,
windy,
I remember
near single digits temperature with the wind cold.
Yep.
Tell them about the ice sculpture that was brought in and how long it stayed.
We have a good friend. His name is Cake Man Raven, and he's really famous for his red velvet cakes up in Brooklyn.
Right.
And he has come down for many of our anniversaries and just blessed us with 600 red velvet cupcakes at a time, and just a sweet man. He called us and said, hey, for the inauguration, I want to come down and I want to carve an Obama ice sculpture and put it out in front.
Right.
He brought down giant colored blocks, red, white, blue, and he carved in the alley with 3 chainsaws, O-B-A-M-A.
Yeah.
Set it up on a table and put that out front.
Out front.
Outside, right in front of the restaurant. Right. And it was so cold, we thought the thing would melt at some point. Now, it lasted for a week, whereas, you know, cars are blocking traffic, buses are pulling up, looking at it, and the police were like, when are y'all going to take that down?
Yeah.
I guess when it melts. But it was that cold, but it was tremendous.
And to think of it wasn't like that for one day.
No.
It was like that for multiple days.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let me just ask this. From a business point of view, was that like your all-time record sales?
Yeah. Well, and we didn't talk about the reason that. Well, let Mom speak to that. But we didn't talk about him actually coming into the restaurant.
We hadn't talked about that, right?
Right. And so 10 days before he was inaugurated.
Yeah.
January 10th is when he walked in the door himself, and that's really what sparked that level of business.
Yeah.
It wasn't just the inauguration was happening and people were coming to visit, but he had physically been there 10 days before when the whole world was watching his every move.
Yeah.
And we did interviews. We might have done 10 interviews a day from different countries. There were cameras in there from all different countries.
Right.
And there were cameras just interviewing us for all the way leading up and through the inauguration. And that's really what did it.
Right. Came in there with
President-elect. He was president-elect.
He first came in with Mayor Fenty, right?
Well,
Correct.
and that was his first outing in the city.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So it was
that
significant. It was significant.
You know, that was a sweet touch there.
That was incredible. That was really the emotional time
touch.
that you just, of all places to go.
Yeah.
He came to U Street and he came to Ben's.
And let me ask you, do you know how many hot dogs or burgers you sold that day?
No, we don't concern ourselves with that.
They ain't got time to count.
No, we don't do that. We just stay busy. We just keep busy. We just do what we can.
We just kind of serve the people as fast as we can and as well as we can.
This has been a tremendous community for us. You know, we celebrated 40 years in business. Nizam put together a press conference for our 40th anniversary. That was our first celebration.
Yeah.
And amazingly, people stood in line all day on a hot August day, as it will probably do Thursday. All day, coming in to just buy a hot dog.
Oh, I remember. I was there.
And the funny thing is, these are some people that came the day before and the day after. And we're like, look, the line is huge. Why are you standing in line? Just come tomorrow.
Right.
And they said, no, we have to be here today.
Want to be there.
Today is your anniversary. We're coming. We're going to be here today.
There are a couple of surprises in store for you on Thursday. I'll just tease you with that as we go to break here on the Rock Newman Show. We'll be back with Virginia and Nizam Ali, folks who are running a D.C. institution called Ben's Chili Bowl. They say the half smoke will make you. What's the slogan?
Our chili will make a hot dog bark.
Our chili will make the hot dog bark. And we're going to talk about one of their favorite customers who has talked about this institution around the world. A guy you might have heard of. His name is Bill Cosby. When we come back on the Rock Newman Show. Hello to all my friends in the DMV. I am Rock Newman from the Rock Newman Show. I want to tell you about the MGM Grand National Harbor, the most exciting project to come to the District, Maryland, or Virginia in quite some time. You're going to have great fun. Come on down, support this project with all you have, It is going to be wonderful for the area. We're going to increase our tax base. We're going to get funding for the police department, for ambulance, for fire, for education. It is really a project that is going to benefit our area. Folks, we want to support in a very strong DMV kind of way this great project from the MGM Grand National Harbor.
And now, the Rock Newman Show.
Hello, folks. This will be our final segment today, August the 17th, 2013. We are celebrating 55 years of love and half smokes and hot dogs and hamburgers. And interestingly enough, I'll tell you what, it's hard to pick a favorite. It's almost like a child as to which one I like best. But if someone really made me choose, I might choose the turkey burger. When I come in there, which I shouldn't be doing, but at 1 o'clock in the morning, sometimes the guy just nods and starts putting it on the grill there, and he comes back, and I've got a turkey burger with ketchup and relish and mayonnaise and hot sauce, and I already said relish, and a few onions, and it is delicious. And also your tuna fish sandwich. It's just incredible. I see you got a couple of new items on the board up there. Mm-hmm. And speaking on the board, you have up there and have had for a very long time a relationship. Have his picture, Bill Cosby. You've had a relationship with him. Tell us about how that relationship got started. I mean, there's so many others. I've heard personal testimonies. I've heard people talk in public. I've heard Roberta Flack say when she was a struggling student at Howard University and simply didn't have any money to eat, she came and got fed with love and some real good food at Ben's Chili Bowl when she couldn't even pay for it. I think it was it the 50th anniversary that she
spoke
showed
about
up?
that, yes.
Yes, and she sang at our gala.
Yes.
For free.
Yes.
As sweet as she is.
How is that? I mean, to hear her tell that story, people were riveted when she told that story about not being able to eat and not knowing what she would have done to survive to get through school at Howard University if Ben's Chili Bowl hadn't been there. So when we talk about what Ben's has meant to the community, it's meant those kind of things. It's meant actual survival for some folks.
I think it's a mutual love. It's our love for our customers, for our neighborhood and our community, and that love comes back.
Yeah.
And that's the only way we can explain it. We've been with so many blessings, and we absolutely need to talk about Bill Cosby as a blessing.
Yeah, you know what, before we go to Bill, because now part of what has happened, in part because of those many blessings, is you're now at Nationals Park. You come by and there's that unmistakable aroma. Are you out at FedEx Field also?
We're a second year at FedEx Field.
Uh-huh.
Yes. And then we bought a building on 8th Street Northeast. That'll be another Ben's Chili Bowl.
Oh, so you actually are. That's going to be your second branch out in addition to the second real Ben, because you got Ben's next door that's a different kind of establishment.
Correct.
Right.
So we're working on 8th Street. It's under construction now. Probably take about 8 months or so to get up and running. Okay. And we're looking at other places. We're looking at the airports. We're looking at other areas. So I think it's the time that and we really feel like it's not growing for the money part of it. It feels like it's a responsibility that we've been giving so many blessings that we have to do a little something more with it. I think as absolutely paying tribute to the legacy, not
certainly commercial.
No.
And you know something, it's not something, and I think it's a similarity to this establishment here, Busboys and Poets. There is not the sense that it's a business. It's just not the sense that it's a business. It's a place to come and have a good time, you know. So that sense of community, and I've heard Andy Shalal, who's the owner, the visionary of this place here, talk about that kind of commitment to the customer, where it's just not like it's because some restaurants you go in. Some places you go in and you just feel like, hey, it's a business and it's okay. Right. But that's not how you feel over there. It's a gathering place.
And it's where things happen. It's where people meet. It's where discussions happen.
Right.
It's where actions get planned.
It's
where change happens.
The person who's in charge of my sound here, it's where he met his wife.
We've got a few of those stories.
Really?
Quite a few of those stories, yes.
I can only imagine. Tell us about Bill Cosby's relationship.
Bill Cosby started coming to the bowl in 1959. He was in the Navy and a hospital corpsman stationed at Bethesda Naval Hospital. And he had met a friend here from Washington, Ron Crockett, who left the Navy and went on to the University of Maryland. Met Camille and said, you need to meet this girl, Bill. You've got to meet this girl. So he brought her to the Chili Bowl. They met, and they fell in love.
So the first time Bill and Camille met was at Ben's?
Well, they were introduced by Ronnie Crockett, and they dated at the Ben's Chili Bowl. I'm not sure if it was the very first time they met. I don't know. I have to ask him that when he comes Thursday.
But the two of them became regulars.
Oh yeah.
As long back as 59.
Oh yes. Back in, yeah. Oh
right.
yes.
And just having them date there. So when Bill Cosby has been a friend for so long, he said, no, this is part of my history. Don't thank me. This is part of my history.
Right.
My wife and I, before we got married, dated here. I courted her here.
You know, I mean, because part of what just had me just like jumping up and screaming one night is I'm watching, was it Leno or Carson? I can't remember.
Johnny Carson. Way back, Johnny Carson.
With Johnny Carson.
Yeah.
Bill Cosby's on Johnny Carson.
Yeah. Testified.
And, they're having their conversation or whatever. And he starts to talk about Ben's Chili Bowl, and I really wasn't aware of his history there. When he did it, I was like, oh my, I can't believe
on
this.
Johnny
so
Carson.
on, you know,
way back,
I mean, at that time, when you buy advertising, that was some of the most expensive advertising that anyone could possibly buy. And Bill Cosby's just sitting on there and talking about getting mustard down his arms and how you eat a half smoke.
And he did it on the Oprah Winfrey Show. And on CNN. And on stage all over the country and around the world.
Oh,
He's been tremendous.
Larry King's office called one day and said, what is that thing Cosby likes there? This was years ago. And we said, oh, yeah, we know. And here comes a blonde in a cab. And she picks up these half smokes and takes them back. And just before he's going off the air, Larry hands him this bag, and he opens it and he goes, Ben's Chili Bowl, Washington, D.C.
How special was that?
It's been unbelievable. It's just incredible.
And you know, I guess it was about probably maybe 2 years ago I was in there. 2 years ago. I meet Bernard, a gentleman by the name of Bernard Demchek in there. And Bernard Demchek has been involved in this city and everything. He's the unofficial mayor of U Street.
The historian of Ben's.
He's the official historian
of Ben's. And the official historian
of Ben's. And did you see his office tag there in the Chili Bowl?
I did see his office tag
hours.
And I read his paper on how you eat a half smoke.
Right. And when he wrote it like 10 years ago, I said, this guy just has too much time on his hands.
Right.
But he's been incredible. He actually has he got all of our papers, our archives, archived at the GW's Gelman Library. So they're all preserved and cataloged for eternity.
And if someone wants to sort of review that, what do you do? How do you get to see that?
It's just all physically at the GW Gelman Library, and I'm sure it's online. If you go to GW and search the Gelman Library or their archives, that it's there, that you can research it and see all of our old memorabilia, some old payroll books and different things from 50, 55 years ago.
So people recognize Ben's Chili Bowl now from around the world, and they see this incredible success story. You know, and I often try to tell young folks, you see these things that you think were overnight success, and overnight success generally always come from a lot of hard work, a lot of disappointments, a lot of failures, and some tough times. And I was in this city. I helped dig some of the first holes. I had a little construction job when I was at Howard University back in the 70s. And I helped dig some of the first holes for the subway here. And I came up to come to Ben's one day, coming down U Street, and I couldn't get there. It was like nearly impossible to get there.
Certainly couldn't get there by a car.
The subway, you could not drive on. You couldn't drive at all.
That's right.
And that must have caused some very lean times.
We had one employee during that time, just me and one employee. I believe you were in college. And that's Bernadette. We call her Peaches. She's been with me 35 years.
Absolutely.
She's still there.
Yes.
But the downslide began earlier than that, you know, with the influx of drugs in the late 70s and all of the 80s. And then in the end of the 80s, I believe it was when they decided to finally give us a subway system.
Yeah.
We were the poorest neighborhood, needed it the most, but really the last to get the subway in the city.
Yeah.
And when they decided to do that, they simply took away the whole physical street for a period of time. So the only way to get there was by V Street, which is one way, come down the alley, and you'd have to reverse to get out of there.
And it wasn't like that was a 3-month process.
Oh, no.
That was a long time.
Yeah, that was a long time.
It's 5 years total. 3 years, there was no street. The street was totally dug up.
You know, going in sort of the wilderness of that, you know, was there ever the thought that you might not be able to survive?
Well, we were able to survive because I thank my husband again. He was a rather frugal man, and the first thing when we were able to purchase the building, then we made every effort to pay for that building, you know, and so we had been able to do that. It was a struggle to pay the property taxes, and I don't want to have to tell you what the property tax, how it escalated shortly after they dug the hole.
Right.
You know, but we were kind of prepared because we had lived our life in such a way that we tried to save whatever little money we made, and we tried to make the payments on that building, and that's how we were able to stay there. So did the bank, and so did Lee's Flower Shop. We are the 3 businesses that remained on U Street through the turmoil.
Right.
Drugs and construction of the subway system. It was a really hard time.
Right.
Hard time.
Right.
We'd have to go into our savings to pay the property taxes.
Wow. And you know, at one point, with the city being so predominantly African American, the majority of, you know, there was a time when I was coming in, 70s, 80s, whatever it might have been. Certainly when I was at Howard University, you know, it seemed to be a predominantly, you know, African American clientele.
Right.
It seems now that I'm struck by how absolutely comfortable it is, and everyone seems to feel coming in there. And I'm talking about, you know, young kids from American University and Catholic University, you know, joining forces with Howard University, the old, the new. I mean, it truly is a gathering place for everyone.
Well, I hear my oldest son, who takes care of the night shift, talk about that all the time. He said, oh no, the white folks are not afraid to be there anymore. They're just as comfortable if someone says something to them. Hey man, you're cutting the line. They stand up for themselves. They're very comfortable. Everybody's very comfortable. And he said at 3 o'clock in the morning, when they've all left the clubs, they're verbal.
Verbal.
They're very verbal, yes.
When they've left
but
the
everybody's
club,
there.
They left the club and have turned their wrists.
They are just as much at home as the folks that used to live around the corner. Yeah. Just as much at home, yes. And we're proud of that. We're proud of our diversity. I mean, the country should look that way, be that way.
Not to mention the diversity even back then.
Yeah.
And it was always a place for all people, even back when we first opened.
Right.
So it was always, had everybody. Had all kinds of people in the 80s and the 70s, from punk rockers to the whole punk music scene that DC had everybody, all sitting side by side.
I'm going to ask you a question now that might make it almost says, you know, like when you ask a parent who their favorite child is. Is there one moment in all of this time, this coming Thursday will be 55 years, is there one moment that stands out for any reason it might be more memorable than the other?
There were so many moments, Rock, so many moments. But I think what was most profound for me was that first 40th anniversary celebration. When I'm thinking, we're just having a little press conference. I'm surprised when I think we were in Trinidad, Ben and I, and Nizam calls and says, Mom, I think you guys are going to have to come back because this little celebration is going to be a little bigger than I thought.
Turned into something.
Okay, so we came back the day before. Remember, you picked us up at the airport, and he said, I need you guys down at 8 o'clock in the morning. Tony Perkins was broadcasting live from chili bowl.
Sure.
And to see people just come in there and stand for hours all day long, and most of the night.
And we talked about Obama's inauguration being cold. That was hot. That was a hot August day.
And we weren't giving away anything.
Right.
We weren't. There were no stars. We didn't. You know. I mean, it was just amazing. It was our community.
Yeah.
It was this city.
Yeah.
They weren't tourists. It was this city and our community. That was profound for me.
That stands
Yes.
up. Yeah.
Yeah. Very touching.
Yeah. Ben left us his physical presence. He left us when? When was that?
2009, October 7th.
Mm-hmm.
And I say physical presence because absolutely, his spirit is all over that place. That is still Ben's Chili Bowl.
They they do a video in there every day, and I see him and hear his voice every day, 10 times a day for the groups that come.
Yeah.
They've the kids have put together a little historical video.
Yeah.
So he's still there, yes.
Yeah. Thank God.
And we had 51 years of marriage.
Say that again?
51 years of marriage.
51. Wow. And how many kids?
3 sons.
Wow.
They married 3 lovely girls, and we have 3 wonderful grandchildren.
Fantastic.
So I'm very blessed.
Nizam, so the future, I mean, you're looking to expand. I mean, you're looking to grow.
Yeah, and it's been a conscious decision, I think, among our family. We want to do it right. We don't have to do it fast. We don't have to ride any waves or anything. We just do it at our own pace. Next door, when we opened that up, it seemed logical because it was right next door. We come to that same 1213 U Street every day.
Right.
What could we do right next door? We were able to buy that building.
Right.
We put a gift shop upstairs because we're there too, and now we have the opportunity. We can ship half smokes and chili all across the country, ordering kind of on the website. So we said, what can we do there? And then we branched out to the ballparks and things. So we think as long as we can keep the quality up and that service up, I think it's okay to grow.
For those folks, who watch, I mean, literally, this show is seen around the world on the web, live streaming. For those whose mouth are out there just watering, how can they get a half smoke shipped?
Oh, just benschilibowl.com. There's an online store there, or you call up the shop, and we'll put you through to Mike, and Mike will take your order and ship it out to you. He'll get FedEx to you. It'll be there in 1 to 2 days.
And I mean, and how does it come? Does it come?
It comes frozen. So we give you the half smokes and we give you the chili sauce. And we know that you can get your own hot dog bun and your own mustard or onions. So you grill out your half smokes, cook them in the kitchen or on the grill, and you heat up your chili, put them in a bun, put that mustard, onions, and our chili sauce that comes packed on top of that. Go to town.
Have you all ever revealed the secret to the sauce?
No. Oh no.
No.
Oh, Mama wouldn't let us do that. So it's a secret. It's only the family knows, and we put we have these paper bags that we mix all of the dry spices together in bags every day, and we put them up on the shelf, and then only a few select employees can take those dry spices, mix them with the ground beef, and put it together and actually make a full pot of chili sauce, which takes a couple hours to do. So we make it all
after I've
fresh.
had my burger and fries and my drink, I want to put in a request. Tell whoever is working there that whenever I come in and I ask for that damn cakes you have down there at the top of the counter, tell them don't give it to me. I don't care if I scream and holler. Tell them don't give it to me.
And I don't want to put your stuff out there, but I remember the decades of you coming in.
Yes.
With that glass of milk and a piece of strawberry cake. Strawberry
I don't need
cake.
it.
All the time.
Need it.
All the time. It was great.
Whether that is red velvet cake, whether that is that coconut,
pineapple,
just crazy pineapple cake, chocolate cake. I brought my nephew in there from Los Angeles one day, and you guys had the nerve to have some sweet potato cake. And I can't tell you the number of times that he's asked me to send him sweet potato cake to Los Angeles. And let me say something. I posted that you all were going to be on my Facebook page. And the platitudes that came in, there was one lady that said that what she made sure happened when she took her kid to college was that they had a poster of Ben's Chili Bowl on the wall. Colin Jones, who's a recent graduate of Duke University, came in. He said, it's some of the best food I ever had in my life. Their hash smokes got swag. It was, the responses that I got, look, In the world of social media and Facebook, rarely do you put up anything, and that you don't get some people throwing darts at you because you know they are anonymous. Every single person that responded, that knew that you were coming on the show, gave nothing but, didn't give anything but love and praise. And I think that that is the story of Ben's Chili Bowl, is that folks love you and feel good about you. And that has happened as a result of the love and the nourishment that you have provided to a community for 55 years. So happy anniversary.
Well, thank you.
I can't wait to see you Thursday. And, you know, if knowing me like I know me, I'll probably be over there at 1 o'clock in the morning before Thursday.
Well, come on over.
Come on down.
We're going to have fun.
I will be there. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much, Rock. Thank you. I mean, always.
Thank you.
Love you guys.
All right, love you too.
55 more great years.
Thank you.
Folks, that wraps it up today on the Rock Newman Show. We'll see you on next Saturday. It is the day of the 50th anniversary of the march, and we're going to do a special broadcast. We will not be broadcasting from 9 to noon. We're going to be broadcasting from 5 p.m. to 9, and maybe even after that. There are a multitude of people that we are going to be having on the show talking about 50 years after the I Have a Dream speech. This will be the place to be. Come join us next week, 5 to 9, right here at Busboys and Poets in the Langston Hughes Room. Until then, go in peace.